All right. This meeting is called to order. Welcome to the Wednesday, February 5th meeting of the Board of Education. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silent meditation. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Trombetta to present the WSHM Superintendent's Report.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you that have not received my call yet, you'll be happy to hear that there is a 2-hour delay tomorrow, Michael. So you can sleep in a little and drive carefully in the morning, please. Also, I know later on today, we'll be sending out a letter to a bunch of our elected officials about UPK and the allocation that we're given yearly for each student being a concern. And earlier, 2 weeks ago, we discussed how this was going to be a problem for us this year, but Scope has agreed to work with us. So this year, we are able to provide UPK to our community again. The application went out on the website today, and I know we sent a connect out as well to let the community know. But this year, it's working out for us. We still need the support of the community to write to our elected officials to let them know that there is a need to change the allocation per pupil so that we don't run into this issue moving forward. And now I'd like to turn it over to Phil, Gary, and Chris Vaccaro for Women in Sports.
Phil and myself, and he pitched this idea to us about a month, 2 months ago, and we just kind of ran with it. And I'll let Chris talk in a little bit, but today we visited 2 high schools. We gathered a bunch of our female athletes and some of our female coaches. We showed them the poster, which we'll present to both of you, President Scavo and Superintendent Trombetta, to hopefully be hung here in district office. And we talked about the importance of women's sports and had a photo opportunity, which Chris is then going to highlight in social media to really get out about, the importance of participating in sports. And we've heard the characteristics and cliches over the years, but the importance and really the positives of being involved in extracurricular activities such as sports and the impact it has on us mentally and physically and socially, going forward. So without going further, Chris, you want to come up and give a little?
Thank you, board, administration. Yeah, so it's a special day. The National Girls and Women's in Sports Day has been around for 40 years, running with the theme of empowering the next generation of incredible female student athletes at Sachem. I thought it's a very important time right now, presently in our country, to make sure we empower our young women to do the best they can do, because they are, and they're representing us, and they're leaders, and they're athletes, and they're scholars. And we've had incredible examples set by the coaches that have come here and by the alumni that have come here and have won championships and have been Hall of Famers and have become All-Americans. So the theme this year for us is to honor our Hall of Famers who are women as an example. And we always do a great job here. You've heard me say this before, of honoring the past to inspire the future. So this mosaic features all of the women who are in the Sachem Hall of Fame, including Ms. Trombetta's sister, Carrie, who's on here. And we presented this at both high schools today. A version of this will be presented at each school in the district. We spoke with 30 varsity athletes today, all obviously young women, and we let them know we support them, we're here for them, and we're proud of them. And we hope they extend that message to their coaches and to their teammates as well. And so as a result, we have a poster, we have a theme every year we're going to run with. We want this to be an annual thing that we rally behind, obviously supporting our young student athletes. And the other element of this is we're going to roll out, with the help of Gary and Phil, a numbers of recognition program, so that each team on the women's side picks a number that's special because it was worn by a young woman that played on that team once before. This year's team is girls soccer. The number is 22. And the significance of that is Karen Ferguson, who's the head women's soccer coach at the University of Louisville. She's a Sachem alum. She played at UConn. She's an All-American. She's a national champion. She played on the U.S. women's national soccer team. You cannot get any higher than that. You cannot achieve more than that in soccer. She's a leader. She was an incredible student athlete here. She loves the fact that she went to Sachem. It made her who she is. So from now on, the number 22 at East and North for girls soccer will go to the student athlete that represents those values of leadership, of scholarly success, and of Sachem pride. And I told Coach Ferguson about that this week. She was floored. And so we're going to start that. Also, each year we'll pick a different team and a different number, and there'll be a bit of symmetry there between being a student leader and relating that to the next student leader that wears the number. It's not a retired number. It just goes to a student athlete that is really embodies those characteristics. So those are the ways that we're honoring National Girls and Women's in Sports Day here. And, appreciate the opportunity to be able to do these things, because the people who came here and set an example for these young girls are special. And we want to keep that going, and we want to create more Hall of Famers in the future. So that's our note. And so
Piggyback on Chris, one of the things even about, we constantly talk about in the world of sports and athletics, records are made to be broken. And while it's nice to get a jersey retired, it's never worn again. And we want to change that to pass on for all the honorable athletes who, as Chris said, talked about their traits, to pass on to kids. And as we start talking about, we've heard about it in numerous places too. We've had conversations from Ben, and she shared her story. We talked to the people, and it's really an idea that's been out there, but I think it actually carries a lot more ways to get going. And just while Chris was talking, I just started thinking about all the girls' teams in Sachem who have had great accomplishments for the last 2 years. This Sunday, we have our East Girls track team, all county. We have numerous girls that go to states. Our field hockey team in the fall, our cheerleaders are state champions, our softball team in the spring went to the Final Four in states right here in Belport. And it just got me going a little bit, really how successful our girls are. And I'm not going to keep a tally between the two genders, but they are doing phenomenally well, and they should be recognized. I want to know they're proud of that. So we want to present this to both of you. We'll walk it up, and you can look at it and share, and we can get you a fan copy as well.
Rob, I just want just one quick thing. As a former female athlete who lost a Long Island championship to Sachem, I just want to also recognize Ms. Trombetta as one of our former athletes, who is awesome.
I'm going to ask Chris now to speak about the Sachem Educational Foundation and an update there.
I'll just stay up here all night. So hopefully you've seen promotion of our inaugural Sachem Education Foundation Gala. It's on March 27th at 6 o'clock at Flower Field in St. James. As I've mentioned, the Education Foundation was started to generate grant money that we can give to K-12 for programs that go beyond our standard curriculum. And so to do that, we're going to have a really big gala every year and generate hopefully significant funds. We're honoring Mrs. Trombetta and Jim Nolan, and we have some alumni that we're going to announce soon as well. In fact, I could say Christopher Macchio is one of them. America's tenor is going to be performing at the event. He'll sing several songs. Obviously, he'll sing the national anthem. So hopefully he's a draw. Come and watch him sing. And, he's a class of 96 grad. We'll have raffles. We'll have 50-50. Of course, we'll have a journal. There's sponsorships, tables, and tickets available. But it's, really the push now for generating ticket and sponsorship sales is huge. We're going to be pushing it on social media. We're going to be pushing it throughout the district and throughout the community, and we're excited about it. So we're in full planning mode, execution mode, really. And if there's any questions, you of course let me know. But appreciate the support, and I really hope to be standing up here with a giant check at some point after, with a nice amount of money that we generated. So I'm excited, and this is what we've been working for the last year. And does anybody have any questions about it?
Questions from the board?
Yeah.
Just a quick comment to the public. If anybody, I'm on that committee, and if anybody would like to donate anything, we're still short a few baskets. We've done a great job making baskets for the raffle, but we're still short some baskets. So if you have anything, please feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, and then the way to get tickets or sponsorships or anything, it's just sachemfoundation.org. Follow Sachem Education Foundation on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Google it. It'll come up the first thing that you see. So it's all accessible, very easy to get tickets, ask questions, or just reach out. So that's it. That's the update. Any other questions, though?
Hey, Chris, just a comment. Just thank you from the board for really spearheading this and getting this up and running. I know it was a vision of Dr. Pelletieri and our Central Office Administration with you. Really kind of brought this to fruition, and it's exciting. So we have a lot of pride out there in the, not just in the community, but across the country, in different cities, of people who really credit Sachem for making them who they are. So thank you so much for putting this together, and we look forward to it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Well,
Good. I have one other update. It's unrelated to Sachem, but it's related to Sachem. So my other hat amongst the 15 that I wear is the president of the Suffolk County Sports Hall of Fame. And I'm proud to announce that 2 of our alumni will be inducted this year in the class of 2025. So Joe Amplo, the head coach at the Naval Academy for lacrosse, is going to be inducted. And Sam Ryan, who's a news anchor, sports anchor for ABC and formerly ESPN and MLB Network, she will be honored. So there may be a coincidence here, but there's more Sachem alums in the Suffolk County Sports Hall of Fame than any other school district. I can't comment on that, but we're very proud of our alumni, and we're going to honor those 2 people, and they're incredible folks. So those are all the updates.
Great.
Before we go into the budget presentation and the EPC presentation, I just want to give a shout out to Sachem North and Sachem East Cheer. They're down at Nationals. They left this afternoon, so we wish them well. And also to say congratulations to our North wrestlers, talking about pride and tradition. We had a send-off for our wrestlers last week, and it was the old Sachem feeling. It was very interesting to see. You could everyone walked around the chief. No one would walk on the chief as they were exiting the gym lobby. But the cheerleaders were there, the Arwettes, the student body was there, the parents. We had fire trucks and police to escort them out, and they really did us proud up there. And then also to Sachem East girls track won the counties this weekend, so it was really nice. They're breaking records left and right, so very proud of them as well. And we wish all the sports teams luck in the postseason that they're entering now. And I'm going to pass it over to Michael before we get into that, so because this is going to take a little bit longer.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to say that the Model UN students from East and North are attending a big conference this weekend at Connecticut High School. And I'd like to congratulate Sachem North Wrestling and the girls winning track for winning counties. And recently we had a meeting discussing the ALS Ride for Life. We would like donations. Any amount of money would help. And honor societies are accepting them for credits, which is very helpful. And mid-year graduation at East is tomorrow at 11 a.m. And North was this past Tuesday.
That's Ride for Life. If people want to donate, is there something online?
Yes, for the it'll be on the student government Google Classroom, and we have a QR code, and it'll send you straight to the link. We're not accepting cash donations; it's all online.
Okay. Is there something that we can do? Because I know I have trouble getting into my children's Google Classroom. Is there something we could do on our website, main website, to help raise that money? Maybe put that QR code. Are we allowed to?
Yes, I can
Sure.
get you that QR code.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to pass it over to Johnson Control so they can do our EPC presentation, please.
Thank you. I'd like to start out by saying thank you to the entire Sachem School Board, Board President, and Superintendent. I brought my entire team here tonight. Since the time that we had our interview over the summer and we were selected to move forward, we've put in a few thousand hours. You really probably haven't seen us, but I know Michelle's office and Pasquale and Scott have spoken to us, texted with us, emailed with us ad nauseum. So we've been here through all the different schools. Tonight, we're going to go through a presentation that's an update to the energy project to show you basically the results of the complete detailed energy audit and what we think the project is going to be for the Sachem School District. It's pretty exciting. I mean, what we're talking about here is groundbreaking too, but I don't want to give away all the fun. I'll just start going into it. Feel free to ask questions the whole time I'm going. I don't care when you ask. So I did bring the Sachem team, as we're calling them. In a minute, I'll go over the introductions. I'll go through the project. I'll go through each one of the measures. There's 6 of them. Talk about the cost and savings, and then questions. But again, I feel it's best ask questions the whole time so you don't forget. So here's my team. I have, and again, the first one on the left, Chuck McGinnis, was the vice president who was here the day of the interview. He couldn't make it. His flights were canceled. So even better, I have the guy who's going to run the job, Ted Mejia, here. Ted is a project executive, very experienced, and he's going to be on site, watching over the entire project from start to finish, assuming we move forward. I have Dave Angelo in the back of the room, who's the area general manager, can answer any questions, make any decisions. I have Anthony Marciano with me over here, who's a sales manager. And then we have the team. You have myself. I'm the account executive. Believe it or not, I've been working here since 1998. I've been working on projects literally ever since and never left. I've been through so many of the boards and superintendents along the way, but I loved it. It's one of my favorite school districts, and I'm not just saying that. I have Rob Rolson with me, who's a senior operations leader. Rob will also be on site and overseeing the project. I have Steve Castriata, again, another senior project manager back here. Because it's a very large job, we wanted to make sure we staffed it properly. I have Pratik, who's my lead energy engineer, who's working the clicker behind me, and Steve Stewart, who's also principal engineer, who did all the designs through the boiler rooms, working with John Grillo's office. All right, next slide, Pratik. So let me get into the project here. So just for everybody on the board who might question what is an energy performance contract, I know everybody hasn't been here. By definition, really, all an energy performance contract is it's basically an agreement that allows schools to take budgeted utility and operational costs and reallocate them into the energy project. So what does that mean exactly? I'm presenting a $70 million job here that will be paid 100% from savings out of the existing gas, oil, and electric bill in your current budget. Those dollars, when we save them, will be reallocated over to pay the lease payment. So this project will fund itself completely and make the district money. So that's the most powerful thing here. Okay, so the project we're talking about is approximately $70.6 million. That project is going to produce $2,769,000 year one in annual energy savings. It'll also produce, because of what we're doing, we're replacing old equipment, about $888,000 a year in operation and maintenance savings because you're not repairing and replacing as needed. I show a box on the far right at $13.6 million. That's the IRA benefit. That is part of the Green New Deal when Joe Biden was in office. Since that has changed and Donald Trump has taken over on day one, he did put a pause on all green energy. He's really attacked wind. And this is actually a law, so it's not something an executive order can change. But The guidance we've been getting to date is the sooner you could lock in a contract, the idea is to try to safeguard this money. All of this is extra money for the school district that would inure to your benefit. If that project went away altogether, that money, you don't lose that money, you'd get state aid instead. So if you get that money, you don't get the equivalent state aid. The state aid office just reduces it. So it's not like it's going to go away. It's just rather getting it all up front versus over 15 years. And I think everybody here in this room would want it all up front. I would too. So at the end of this project, we're looking at $23.6 million in positive cash flow. That does not include a dollar's worth of the IRA money. So if the IRA does come in, that $23 million the Sachem schools would make over and above would turn into almost $37 million. So this is an incredible project for the district. Again, it pays for itself 100% and will net the school district somewhere between $23 and $37 million. We're going to do that by implementing 6 energy conservation measures, which I'm going to go through. And again, we built the project out to 17.9 years because that's what the law states. You have to have a simple payback of 18 years or less. And the reason we bring it out to 17.9 is to try and get you the most capital upgrades that we could possibly fit into the project, which is what this school district desperately needs. And I'll go through them one by one. So the first one we're going to talk about is lighting. This is by far the biggest lighting upgrade of any school district on Long Island ever. It's more than 24,000 upgrades. So what does that mean? All the buildings, other than the BOCES buildings, are going to get new LED flat panels that will look pretty much like what you have here in this room. Everywhere. What's so great about LED flat panels? Well, you have many different types. If you walk through all the buildings now, you have many, many different types of light fixtures. We're trying to make them all the same wherever we can. Why? So that it's fair to everybody, because the beautiful thing about new LED flat panels is the light output from it. And this sounds kind of crazy, but the reds and the blues really make the room and the area a nicer place to be in. You feel better. It makes your skin and everything look healthier. And at the end of the day, it makes a better learning environment. These lights that we're putting in have controls in them, meaning if for some reason there was a teacher or a student that is light sensitive, we could program them to be dimmer or brighter, whatever needed to be done. These are smart panels. So it's pretty cool technology. And we're talking about doing these in classrooms, hallways, cafeterias, gyms, and offices. So basically everywhere. I would say the only exception would be auditoriums, as theatrical lighting, stuff like that. And the lighting that we're talking about putting in is eligible for state aid. So that's pretty powerful. This lighting measure alone is going to generate over $609,000 a year in energy savings. So the good thing about that is the more money we save with lighting, the less money we have to produce with the solar. But we'll get to that in a minute. So any questions on lighting at all? Sure.
So with the 609,000 savings, is that your estimate, or do we have benchmarks that other districts have saved that? How are you calculating that? Is that
It's calculated by the existing run hours of the light, how many hours it's on, and you're going to multiply that times the delta between the existing kWh consumption of that light fixture from the now to the new LED, the delta between the two, times those run hours, times what that school, because every school, believe it or not, slightly different cost per kWh, gives you an output. It's not just calculated by us. My engineers behind me calculate it. Those calculations go over to
so
Mr.
it's pretty
Grillo's
real?
office.
It's not a guess. It's pretty real. There's
It's
there's a science
100%
behind
real.
it. There's a
It's checked by 3 different. It'll be checked by us, and I know it's like the fox in the hen house, but we are real. It's guaranteed. And Ingham and Smith, trust me, I've done probably 40 projects with them. They'll make sure we do it. Grillo's office will review it. Then it's going to go to the state education department. It's going to go through architectural review and mechanical review. They check every single thing. And if they don't believe something, they'll question it, because some schools have abnormal run hours because the state believes everybody opens the school at 8 and closes at 2 on the button. They don't believe that they stay open till 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 at night. But it's real and it's checked. I hope
Thank
that
you.
answers your question.
Thanks.
Alex?
What's the lifespan of the panel?
So
And then how much does it cost us to replace it?
I would bet in your lifetime, you probably won't replace these. That's how
Okay.
long they're going to last. The biggest difference between a T8, which is what's in here now, versus an LED, every time you turn a T8 on and off, it's like a little electric spike in there. And there's only so many times you can turn it on and off before it goes out. LEDs made to be turned on and off endless amount of times. If you've ever had a calculator, like I think I just found one. I moved my house and I found one from like elementary school with that little solar panel on it. The second you take it out and it hits the light, boom, it goes on. It almost never goes bad. Can they go bad? Yes. Typically, if it's going to go bad, it'll happen right in the beginning when we put them in, and we'll replace it. We give a nice warranty on it, and we give attic stock. I was talking with Pasquale and Scott. We're going to give them some attic stock so that if anything should go out, they can just replace it at any time. So we'll cover that for you.
Thank you.
Questions? Meredith?
What is the warranty?
2-year warranty.
Parts and labor, or we have to do all our own labor?
2 years parts and labor, and again, we're going to give you some attic stock.
It's a good question about that estimate, that $608,000. If that's after the first year is not met, let's say we're $100,000 under that, what's the recall? Like,
God, I wish Carrie Ann was here. It's so much more powerful when she's sitting next to me. But Carrie Ann will come here and take my hand and write out it. I'm being facetious here.
Yeah.
We'll cut you a check for the
yeah,
difference.
that's wanted the community.
Believe it or not,
Yeah.
the very first project we did here in 1995 ended in 98, and this is going way back. The projects were very different back then, but I remember there was electric hot water for the dishes. You know, and they push the trays through, and it's 190-degree water. We put controls on it so that it would shut it off when lunch ended, so you weren't heating that water forever. Unfortunately, when they were programmed, the program, instead of shutting them off, ran 24 hours a day. There was a problem, and we cut you a check. You were the first, and I would like to say only, but the first we ever cut a check to on Long Island.
So I just want people to understand that savings that you're presenting is guaranteed.
It's guaranteed in writing for 18 years. Life of the project.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This is just another, when we had our initial interview, we changed our approach. So on the left, that's a surface mount fixture. We like the look, and I think you'll appreciate the look much better. That's the same exact room on the right. Those are the flat panels that we would do. So we just simply remove the surface mount and put in the flat panels so that all the schools look the same, so that it's fair to everybody. I mean, it's nothing more than just an idea just to show you what the end product could look like. All right. Heating system. This is a crazy for me. It's super complicated, but I'm going to bring up one of my engineers to just run through it. But I just want to point out the boiler on the right. It's called an Endura, and it's made by Fulton. And one of the things that we kind of were worried about, again, with Trump, and I'm not picking on anybody, but he has imposed tariffs. And right now, there's contractors here saying, hey, prices are starting to go up. This is not only made in America, it's made in New York. That is a best-in-class, top-tier boiler made in Syracuse, I think, right?
That's correct.
Syracuse, New York. So that's not going to be a problem. I'll let Steve run through the
Hello, everybody.
the boilers.
So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about your boiler plants. So as many people probably know, there are non-functioning Airco KC1000s that are shown in the picture here. Those are condensing boilers that are installed in the majority of your boiler rooms. There are High School North. It has a plant which we're going to fully gut, and Grundy we're going to fully gut and replace with a type of boiler which we'll talk about in a moment. But the remainder of the locations where the Enduras are located, we're going to replace one for one with the 1000 MBH. 1000 is a million MBH boiler. So those are one for one with the Enduras. So the next slide here shows High School North and Grundy. High School North, you have sectional boilers. In the majority of the plants, you have the condensing boilers plus the sectional boilers. The sectional boilers that are shown in High School North are similar to the other ones. They are still operational. But here at High School North, we saw a great opportunity to gut the entire plant and replace with Endura's sectional condensing boilers. At Grundy, because you have no, they have gas there, but you're still firing on oil. We saw it as a great opportunity to work with National Grid, which they guaranteed us the opportunity to bring natural gas there to power up your entire boiler plant there and replace with a dual fuel VTG boiler for one, and then the remaining would be the indoors. What's the benefit of having these indoors? They're condensing boilers that fire at a much higher efficiency than your standard boiler plant. So the energy savings here with this measure, not only with energy, but also with O&M, you're going to save $875,558 per year. The reason the O&M is also high is because each of these condensing boilers, control boards are about $5,000 a piece. So the district's been trying to replace those, getting them in operation. Right now, they're just to the point where they're not working anymore. So we had worked together during the RFP stage, responding, and this is what we came up with. Is that good?
Thank you. Yeah. I'll just add before that question, in layman's terms, what he was trying to say, that sales and engineering, all the boiler rooms are going to get new boilers. Not every single boiler is going to be new, but all the ones that are not working are going to be replaced, and you're going to be able to heat every single classroom in every building. And it's going to be a big relief for the business office and help John Grillo out with the 5-year plan.
Rob, I have
Quick
a
question about the existing boilers, the approximate age of the boilers, and were they part of a pre-existing energy performance contract?
So the Airco boilers, those little blue ones that you see in the picture and the gray ones on the bottom, those were installed in 1996 on the original performance contract. And believe it or not, those boilers had about a 20-year life. They're steel boil, they're steel, not cast iron. So they last about 20 years, and they're past that. Well past it. So
Rob, I have a
it is
question.
time for replacement.
I noticed Sachem East High School isn't on the list.
That is correct. They have a different style of boiler.
Okay.
Can you just speak into the mic so that people at home can hear you?
Very good,
Yeah,
So the
thank
question
you.
was regarding High School East, constructed in 2002. Those boilers, they are a different style of boiler. There are 9 that are installed there. One is used for the domestic hot water and heating pool and such. So long story short, they require maintenance on those right now. They're not included within this project because we were focusing exclusively on those Aircos that they're totally failed. So they're a different manufacturer. They're Aircos, but they're a different model.
And then next question. You said the Endoras are made in New York, but where do the inside parts of it come from? And if there is a massive delay in getting any kind of product, how does that impact this entire project? Does it push it to 20 years?
Manufactured in New York.
All the parts inside of it as well?
It's all sourced from New York. Yeah, from
And
Fulton.
what about the other components of the job? Like, could anything make this go forward for a few years? And what would happen if that did happen?
Are you asking just on the boilers or
No,
everything?
on the entire project. Like, what happens if there is a delay on materials to the timeline of the 18 years?
It's a good question. The boilers, they're sold through a local rep on Long Island, and they come from New York. They come shipped as a whole piece. No delays, no problems. Everything's made there. The lighting is made in the United States. There are a few pieces in it with those lighting controls that come from overseas, but they're here in the States now, and we don't see any issue getting them. Pretty much everything else that I'm going to go through will all be made here. I think you'll like my responses on all. I'm going to go through each one, and I'll tell you. But excellent question. That's what I would have asked as well. Does everybody understand the boiler approach? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
So are we proposing that we're going to do all the schools around the same timeline?
Yep.
So then they'll all be in need of replacement 20 or 30 years down the road, and I won't be here anymore, but I want to make sure that we don't leave a huge, massive undertaking on somebody else's shoulders in 20 or 30 years.
Yeah. So again, the way pretty much every boiler room is designed, I believe you have the little boilers and then the full size, correct?
That is correct. You have sectional boilers,
Okay.
which are sized to the entire building load. These condensing boilers do, of course, 30 to 40% of it.
So what Steve just said there, again, back to layman's terms, every boiler room has the small boilers. So when it's springtime and fall and you don't need everything, it's hard to say, to be heated. You want to heat the building, but it's not that cold out. You use the little boilers. That's what we're replacing everywhere, except for the couple buildings we're doing them all. So those, say, 25 to 30 years from now, could start to fail all at the same time, but you have the big boilers to heat the building. You can still heat the building if they weren't there. It's just nice to have redundancy so that if one set fails, going along with your thinking, which is an excellent way of thinking, if they're all going to fail at the same time, now we're out all this money. You still have the other boilers. The big boilers will fail somewhere in the middle. Those will be replaced, say, 10 to 15 years from now, all brand new. So you'll have a 15-year run where you're not buying any boilers. So you are actually staging it with the big full-size boilers that have to be replaced every 20, 25 years, and then the smaller ones every 25 years. And they're kind of equally spaced apart.
And all these boilers run off of,
Natural gas.
okay. I thought you meant only Grundy was running off natural gas.
So Grundy Prime right now is oil only
Okay.
for the boilers. We're going to upgrade that plant
Good.
with natural gas.
Okay, good.
Ron, just not to interrupt, does their microphone over there work? If you could just pass that to them so that when,
Oh,
just give it to them so that when we have questions and they answer.
is this one working?
It's working, yeah.
Okay.
I just want to be able for the
You
people
want
at
me
home.
to say that answer again?
No, you're fine, but if more questions come up, at least you have a microphone.
I'm going to
Folks
try and
at home
answer
are
one.
watching.
No, kid.
Yeah, that's right.
Any other questions on the boilers? I'll go to the next. And again, I can go back. I have no problem. All right. Now, to me, the most exciting part, when we were interviewed, and even prior to the interview, when this project came out to look at, this team and we've installed solar at so many school districts on Long Island. It's not even funny. We really are the pioneers, and this team behind me has been doing it along with Sunrise Electric. We were looking at the size of the school district here, the physical space that you have in the parking lots. The roofs are not that good for the most part, so we only have a little bit of roof, and we have some ground mount. But the idea here was we can actually make Sachem the first and only school in the state of New York, and I don't know past New York how far, to be net zero electric. So what does that mean? We have some school districts where we've installed, like here, we're looking to put in 8.5 megawatts. I can say you're net zero at probably 4 megawatts, meaning when you get your electric bill, even in your own, I don't know about the house. Do you have demand at the house? No, right? Negative. So here you have two components on your bill, KWH and demand. KWH is the consumption, and then you have the demand part of the bill. So we can make we can make the consumption go away easier in the past, but you'd always have the demand. So when I would give a speech like this and say, I'm going to get your electric bill to zero, Michelle would call me up and go, Danny, I said I have $400,000 bill for the year. What do you mean? I thought it was going to be zero. It's like, well, that's the demand. In 2022, the tariff changed that it would allow us to put solar behind the meter or in front of the meter. I hope I get this right. In front of the meter means you're generating it to make money for the school district. Because some of the questions came up are, hey, we're putting solar at the BOCES building. Why would we want to spend our money here to give them a free electric bill? That's not what happens. When it's in front of the meter, all of that's generated, it's converted to dollars. It goes into a Sachem Schools energy bank. That's your money to pay down your bill. Yep.
So that's why Sequoia's on there? Are we doing it with Sequoia?
Yep.
Okay. So
Correct.
that's the BOCES building.
Correct.
Okay, that's
It's a great
so
spot.
that'll be making money for us versus.
Yes, they're going to have their regular bill.
Got
They're
it.
going to pay their bill. They're not going to get $1 out.
Okay.
It all goes into the Sachem energy bank here.
Does there come a point where we could make so much that we could actually start selling electric to other schools?
I'm
I'm very greedy.
It's a great
Yeah, go
question.
back
It
to
is
you.
not allowed. And I don't know how to say this a nicer way, but I just picture like my own house. If I told the kids, hey, kids, great news. I just put solar in. Our electric bill's free. And they go, so Xbox, I never have to turn off and I could leave the AC on. The tendency when the bills go down to zero is everybody just says, let's stop acting as responsible people and trying to do the right thing. And again, I'm sorry, I'm just telling a joke here, but reality is it's sized to get you to zero. So in the future, if you continued to add, I mean, you're pretty much air conditioned, but if you keep adding more and more load, over time, you would have to add a little bit more solar to keep it at zero. But the goal here is to get you to zero. And I'm talking net zero. Nobody's done this in New York, period. You'll
All
be
the
only one.
fixtures that you're putting in there, like room sensor, like they shut off when nobody's in the room. They turn right on when somebody comes in the room.
Correct.
Okay. So there really shouldn't be, unless we add air conditioning. There really shouldn't be another reason why we would consume more.
So, as crazy as it sounds, crazy things happen at schools. For example, I'm not going to name any school district names, but we have some school districts where all of a sudden the buildings, just because of the ground, are damp and they're getting mold. And they said, you know what? We need to put in massive dehumidification systems that are electric. It's like central AC. And their electric bill went up. And they're like, Danny, the bill was supposed to be zero. What happened? I'm like, you installed that giant system, remember? And you put new chillers in. You had window AC units. Now you put in monster chillers. I told you your electric bill is going to go up. And we're not the point the finger type of people. I apologize for saying it that way. We're always going to be here working with you, and we'll answer any question, help you in any way. But essentially, the goal is to get you to zero and try and keep you there. But you probably not. You could. I mean, again, certain years, if you don't use buildings over the summer because programs are shifted around or canceled or moved all to one building and nothing's being used in there, you're going to probably overproduce, and that energy bank, it will build up. The good news is you can keep carrying it over and over and over.
Do you have like a certain threshold? Like I sell hot tubs and I have customers that have solar already. As soon as they get a hot tub, and my hot tubs are really energy efficient, as soon as they get a hot tub, all of a sudden their solar bill gets crazy.
Yeah.
And they call me up.
I could attest to that, Meredith. So
Yeah.
yes, I have solar and a hot tub. for
He
you,
said
so
it.
yes.
He does. He has one of my hot tubs.
What brand hot tub?
Hot Springs. They are the most energy efficient out there.
I have a
So-
Hot Springs, and so does the head engineer.
Ah.
And I bought it because he said that's the most energy efficient.
So three
So-
people in this room
all right.
didn't buy it from me.
This picture,
When my son comes over the house, he pumps it up to 102, 103, and leaves the cover open. And I say, hey, shut the cover, lower it down. But that is something that if you started adding items like that, that obviously the bill would go up.
Okay.
But again, you could always run it past us. We don't charge for anything.
So no hot tubs at the school.
Probably not.
I'm
Probably
working
not.
on
A
it.
cold plunge would also use a lot of electric. That's like a mini chiller. So, right. Let them go jump in the lake in the wintertime. It's ice cold.
Alex?
It's free.
How will, if we lose this timeline battle with the electric school bus mandate, how will that negatively impact this net zero if we have a whole hub of school buses back here that will have to change to electric?
So I've talked to the state about this. We're not allowed to do anything with charging. So if you just think about the spirit of a performance contract is to save energy. A lot of school districts are asking us, hey, can we put in charging stations? And we would love to, but we can't because you're going to start using electric. But here's the deal with that. When you put in a charging station, you're going to charge every hour that's being used. You're going to charge at or more for profit. So you're going to make that money back. It's going to go back into your bank. If somebody pulls up and charges their car or bus, you're going to charge them for it. Whether it's a school bus company, I don't know. Now we'll get into contract talk, and I do have some school districts that want to take advantage of like a gate lot. You have a giant lot. If somebody else has no space, you say, hey, how about if I put, and I'm just giving you some ideas. If we put in 30 charging stations here, you could charge your buses here. Your bill's going to go up, but you're going to be making money off of every one of those buses. You could charge more. It becomes a profit center, but you're not in the business of making money. So it starts getting a little crazy. Yeah, I know what you're saying, but the state will say to me like, whoa, wait a minute. You're not supposed to be trying to make money.
Well, I guess the second part of the question then is there's no solar panels at 5 of the elementary schools on this list. So should we be looking at doing more if we are going to need more energy down the line? Should we do it now when we're looking, or I don't want to wait because there's not going to be money down the line to do this later.
So here's where it gets a little crazy. I'm taking you to net zero. You can't go further as part of one of these projects. The state won't approve it. And then you have other issues of PSE and G. They won't allow you to be, is 110% still the rule? 110%. So if you go over 110% savings, they're going to cut you off at 110. So if you go past that, they're going to keep it. It's free. You know what I'm saying? You'd be throwing that money away at that point. Listen, again, I've been here since 1990. Well, I personally wasn't here when they sold the 1996 project, but at the very end, I came on as a project manager and helped finish it in 98. I'll be here. Well, I don't know how many more years, but I'll be here for a while. So when if the buses come through, we'll help you guys. We'll help you put together a full energy plan, whatever you need, and we'll reevaluate it. But yeah, you do have more space that you could put more. But just remember, don't look at those schools and say they're not getting anything. Everything goes to an energy bank. So it all goes to one. It'll go to the business office and can be distributed to every one of the schools. So just because they don't have panels there doesn't mean they're not getting the benefit. Everybody at Sachem Schools is getting the benefit, except for BOCES. They'll pay their own share.
You have a question?
We're doing a capital project at our middle schools in the auditoriums. We're adding air conditioning. Was that factored in to your savings?
No. Here's one of the issues with that. Again, it all goes by the energy law. It's not in, so I can't save it. If it doesn't use energy now, I can't claim savings for a future energy. I know it sounds kind of, you'd be like, yeah, but I know it's going in and the state's reviewing it anyway. It has to be in, and I need 1 year's worth of data to say the middle school used an extra $10,000, $20,000 that year in electric. Then we could take care of it, but it has to be in for a year before the state will approve it.
Thank you.
But Michelle, just a question then. So Sequoia potentially can offset that, right? Because if we're billing, right, or banking, that could
Yes.
potentially offset, perhaps, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So again, this measure is going to produce just over $1.6 million a year in electric that's going to go into that energy bank for you folks. And again, on the bottom, it says subject to change. See, Carrie Ann's not here. Normally she would pick that out. To be finalized with PSE&G. So just to be transparent to everybody here, because that's the way I am. This project is big and timing is insanely important. We want to try and safe harbor you folks to get that IRA benefit. I would love to see a monster check come here. So we want to get it done as quick as possible. So out of abundance of caution, we went ahead, we did all the engineering up front. We've spent a lot of money, a lot of time. We've drilled hundreds and hundreds of holes in all the parking lots to make sure we can put all the solar where we want to put it. We've done the structural on the roofs. We've applied for interconnections at every building. We've applied for more than even what we need in case one of them came back at $1 million. You don't want to spend $1 million to save 100 grand. We call it shift space. We can change a school if need be. So there are a few more schools from that list. That's all we need. But if the interconnections are coming back now, but it's still going to be probably another 4 or 5 months before they're all back to make a final decision. But it doesn't really matter. We have enough now. The costs really shouldn't change. And the plan is, if the board likes what they hear tonight, we want to go to contract as quickly as possible. We actually have a contract ready that we will deliver with your permission to Ingham & Smith as early as Friday to try and fast track this. And why do I want to fast track it? I want to get it into the state. I want to get it approved. I want to get it out. And I want to try and start building, if at all possible. If we can get even just 5% done by December of 2025, and that's a big ask, that's going to safe harbor you. It won't get you the extra, it won't get you to 40%, but it'll lock in at 30% of that IRA money. So it's important not to waste too much time. Yes, sorry.
If the cost of building materials goes up after we've signed the contract, is there any clause in there that we're responsible for that increase?
Ingerman?
I'm not the one in Ingerman. Do you deal with Carrie Ann?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What he meant by that is Carrie Ann says, no, it's on me.
Good. I say no too.
She would appreciate that. So yeah, no, it's on us.
Alex?
Just to ask a similar question that Meredith did before, how long are the panels good for? And are we expecting them to all go bad at once? That way,
Good question.
again, we're not going to be sitting here and then somebody's going to get stuck with
So
replacement.
we use tier 1 panels, Q-Cell, 25-year warranty. So what does that mean? At the end of 25 years, they're guaranteed to be putting out at least 80%. And you're like, oh, that's 20% reduction. That sounds crazy. We were the pioneers of solar on Long Island. The first time solar became available, do you even remember, Rob? Like when we first started doing it? I mean, it's probably 20 years ago. I'll tell you a crazy story. I did it myself at my house. One of the school district people in Nassau County was really involved with Long Island Solar. And at the time, it was LIPA and Lilco. I mean, a long time ago. And they said, if you sign up for solar, it was 15 times the price as it is now. They gave 100% rebate. Fill out this piece of paper, name and address. That's it. I fill out name and address. Months later, a UPS truck pulls up in my house, backs in the driveway. I go, what's up, fellas? What are we doing? Guy comes out. He hands me a piece of paper, $62,000. I go, I don't want this. Take it back. He goes, no. Read the bottom. Paid in full by LIPA. It was the panels. They were 168 watt sharp panels. All they did was give me the panels. I had to put them all together and wire them. And it became like a family thing. I'm not kidding. My wife, my two boys, we all did it for fun. Had some people on the weekends come and help me. Here's the long story short. I had those panels for 15 years and then I replaced them primarily because my youngest son, who's a sports nut, when I left him for 2 minutes, our backyard was 180 feet deep. He took out my golf clubs and started hitting balls. I came back and I look in the back and I go, it looks like a panel's broken. And I walked back there and it was shattered. And then I had 2 rows of panels. I go, well, he couldn't have done it more than once. I walk around the back, he shattered another one. I asked him, I said, please tell me you broke the one in the back first, didn't realize and then broke the front. He goes, no, I broke the one in the front, but I wanted to make sure it was actually me who broke it. So I hit another one and then, sorry, I broke another one. Here's the point of that story. Years and years went by. I never replaced those panels. Snow covered them, snow this deep. Sun goes right through the snow. But everybody thinks solar doesn't work when it snows on it. It does. It goes right through it. And we put a meter on it and not with the snow on it. But even though those panels were broken and it filled with water, still made 168 watts. 15 years later, I put the meter on it, figuring it was going to be way down. The first panels, I mean, those are the worst ones you could buy. Still at 168 watts. They're literally almost indestructible. I personally have never seen any go down. That's probably why they give such a great warranty of 25 years. Will they be gone at 25 years? It's glass. It'll be here forever unless you decide to get rid of them. Sorry, that was a long answer, but you can tell I'm really adamant and I love this stuff.
Your weekend fun is a little different than my weekend fun.
Yeah.
So is your son still punished for that?
He turned 27 the other day. So oddly enough, last night I was out to dinner and I ran into his middle school principal and I'm like, Miss Brown? I'm like, do you remember me? She's like, how's your son Ryan? I'm like, good. And all I remembered was, but good times. Sorry. If there's no other questions, I'll keep going.
Yeah, we can move.
Okay.
Mike, you have a question?
Oh, sorry.
I have a question. I think this came up before, and maybe John Grillo's here. They don't last forever, so they will have to be replaced, and they're not going to be able to just be thrown into the dump, right? Because of what's in them. We were talking about would it be aidable when we go to salvage and replace them, and you were going to check with.
After 15 years, it would be eligible for building aid.
It would be. So even the disposal and the replacement.
Well, the disposal fee wouldn't be eligible for aid, but the replacement would be.
So if the disposal was significant, it would be costly.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, you can proceed.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'll just run through each school, spend as much time as you like. So this is High School East. We have just over 1 megawatt laid out in the parking lot. And again, this particular one, no, sorry, I was looking for something else. Pratik, just show the next slide. Here's an artist rendering of what it would look like. That's the actual parking lot. We took a picture, and this is pretty much what it'll look like. The steel is gray. The base is a cement, and that's pretty much the color of it. Questions that typically come up, and I want to be completely transparent. They're not waterproof. What does that mean? The panels go up along the top, and they get put together with a small gap. In the summertime, when it gets super hot, they expand. They need room to expand and contract. Is that bad? No. What I've done many times is taken boards to school boards and anybody who wants to see, like Smithtown High School West. Smithtown High School West. We have 2.5 megawatts installed in that parking lot. It's exactly like this. And even when it's teeming rain, if you get out of your car, it's like having an umbrella over your head. It blocks 99% of the rain, but every once in a while you'll get that drip probably down the back of your neck that'll drive you nuts. But the truth is, it's going to keep your car cool in the summer. It's going to keep it covered in the winter so you won't have snow on it. Typical question that comes up: what if we get a foot of snow and it's sitting on top of that? Is it going to come down and land on me like an avalanche? No, it's a 5-degree tilt. What does that mean? That means it's almost flat. Even though it doesn't look it, it is so close to flat. If you put a foot of snow on there and watched it melt, it's like watching grass grow. You'd never even see it move, but it will just go down and down and down. And over time, it just keeps melting and dripping over the side. Sometimes people will ask, do we put snow guards on? No. If the tilt is severe, because sometimes because of the conditions of the parking lots, we have to do a real steep to catch the sun. Here we don't, so it would not make sense. If you put a snow guard on it, it would actually catch any of the snow and create a big hill of snow. So you don't want to do that. You just want to let it naturally drip off. But it does provide a tremendous amount of protection for the cars, for the people. Here's another thing. Brentwood schools we did. One of the biggest problems at Brentwood schools was each parking lot had like one light. We put LED lights underneath. So it's lit up. The parking lots are going to be like, boom, all lit up. And that's taken into consideration with the energy cost. So it's just another added bonus. All right, next slide. High School North, and all of these are going to be the same. So sorry, just ask questions. We have it laid out in the parking lot, almost 900 kW. Here's another snapshot of that parking lot, what it would look like. Sagamore Middle, almost 500 kW. Down on the bottom, you see those two blue rows. That's the middle school right there. You can see the buses along the side. Samoset Middle, 1.124. So here we actually have a combination. You see the white roofs with the blue solar panels, and then the parking lot canopy solar. Those roofs happen to be good. That's why we put it up on the roofs.
We have a question.
Yep, sorry.
Meredith.
Because of all the pillars and everything that it takes, how much of a reduction in spaces per parking lot?
None.
None?
None. So
Good, because they're very hard to come by around
yeah,
here.
no, trust me. When we lay these out, that's one of the questions is normally like, well, why'd you pick that spot? We picked the spots where we could put it. The panels are rectangular. They have sharp edges, so you can't do curves and all this cool stuff. And if you ever see it online with curves, they're fillers in there. It's fake panels, but the panels are rectangular. So we try and find long areas where we can fit the most possible. And about every 32 feet, there's going to be a column. That column, we land exactly where the parking lot spaces intersect. So it's typically, somewhere around a 40-inch. Is that the biggest? 48? 42 inch is the biggest base that we put in. So it's nothing different than if you had the light pole in there, you just pull your car in and don't hit the pole. You're not going to hurt the pole. Trust me, the car will
Alex.
When you pick the roof space, is this only spots that we have recently replaced? I mean, what if we have to
Yes.
replace the roof when we?
We only put it on the newer roofs, correct?
And what does happen if a piece of the roof has to be replaced? How does that all work?
Well, if you need to do a repair, those are ballasted. And that basically means that they're laying on the roof, being held down by a ballast, which is typically a brick. They can be. This is where it gets a little nutty. The panels are going to protect the roof. So if it's hail, nothing's going to hit that roof. It's going to hit the panel. So if there was a leak, somebody would have to go out of their way to make a leak, right? So that's one thing. If for some reason from underneath you needed to cut through the roof, and these things can happen, and you need to patch that roof, they're in rows. They can be taken apart. The panels, it's really crazy when you look at it. They come with a male and a female, like plugging in an electric guitar into an amp. That's how they go together, and then they're on. You pull them apart, they're off. I'm simplifying it, but they'd be taken apart by the roofer, probably hire an electrician. The repair would be made, and they'd be slid back into place. They're all individual, but they're put together in rows, but they can be taken apart.
Good.
Seneca Middle School, again, those old roofs. So we went for the parking lot, 600 kW. There's a shot of the parking lot of what it would look like there. You know what? Go back one just so I could show. You see the parking lot? You see the spaces? You had asked about the parking lot space. See how we laid it right over the middle? This way you could park right up against it. Chippewa is another big one, 692 kW. Yep.
That's only a few.
Chippewa, that is a ground mount. That is a great spot to put solar. We can fit almost 700 kW there. That's a big moneymaker for the district. It's the cheapest one to install because it's on the ground. It's one we would like to keep for you guys. If it has to be moved, it can be, but it just costs more if we have to put it in a parking lot.
Let me just ask one stupid question.
Yeah.
How do we protect it? I mean, I know the ones on the roof aren't protected either, but when they're on the ground and they're so accessible, we have issues all the time. So
Yep.
I feel like it's like a target just sitting on the ground.
We're going to put a fence around it with, on the top, we'll put like an anti-climb like clause that you won't want to climb on it. I mean, this is a crazy statement to make, but we have these installed all over Long Island. And do you have any, I've never had anybody call and say, kids came and vandalized. Never. I know it sounds nuts, but they never have. You would think it, but I don't know. I think kids are smart and they look at it and go, that looks like something we don't touch. You know, we'll put signage on it, high voltage. It's not high voltage. You know, don't touch, blah, 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 blah. But I don't think you'd have a problem. But it's a good question. You could always put a camera out there too.
You know, just a quick question on, so Patty, we're not using that field for anything, right? I'm trying to figure out perspective, right?
Presently, Mr. Stevens has that as his driving range with his students.
Yeah, we could put.
But it's
don't
not
worry about it. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
fine.
used for recess or any of
Yeah,
our
okay.
sports.
Thanks.
And I just have a question because I know that somebody will probably ask it. Recently at Winona on our roof, we did have a little issue with, I don't know if those are your panels or whatever, but we did have a little issue in the fire department response. So how safe is everything that you're proposing? Obviously, since it's all going to be around children.
Everything is very, very safe. It is an ongoing legal, so I really can't comment on it, but I'll just talk about something else, even though it's the same exact thing. Up on the roof, when you put the panels, they're very close. You know, they're on an angle and there's a gap. When we installed them, we would typically always walk around the roof when they're done with buildings and grounds and whoever wanted to be there. And we would say, we recommend maintenance. Just, it's your roof. You should go up there probably once a month, no matter what, just to see, are there balls up there? Did something bizarre get thrown up there? And just look under the panels, make sure leaves don't get jammed underneath there. They're not going to catch on fire. There's nothing burning in the solar panels. There's nothing hot. We happen to send people here that exact day. I don't think I can legally go into anything, right? Now, you know what? I don't even want to. They're safe. Trust me, they're very safe. Nobody's going to touch them. They're not going to pull them apart. When we put the wires in, they're all wire tied, super tight, so that, you know, an electrician really needs to be there to pull them apart. If somebody knew what they were doing, they could take them apart. But I don't think they would. And even if you took them apart during the day, it's almost like an experiment where you could bring them real close together and see them arc. But that's about it. You know, what's that? Yeah, I'm just saying, if you get up to the actual panel, after it comes out of the conduit, it has a little tail on it, a wire that goes into the panel. I mean, there's electric everywhere at the district. I hate to say it, in every, you know, lamp post everywhere. You'd be amazed what, if you really wanted to do something. Yeah, that's true. Squirrels do love these, love everything like that. Anytime there's a tree right next to the school, we would always recommend they trim the branches too, so that squirrels wouldn't jump on the roof. But there's other reasons to get rid of the branches so that kids can't jump onto the roof either. More questions on this one or no? Okay. All right. Sorry, I know there's a lot of schools here. Tamarack is a 500 kW system in the parking lot. Waverly is 850 kW, both on the roof and the parking lot. Winona is parking lot only, and the other solar on there is from the last project. Sequoia, we have another small ground mount and big parking lot solar at one point. This is the biggest, I think, at 1.77 megawatts. And this is just a sample of what it looks like as it's going up. That's on the left. Those are called purlins going across before the panels are on it. Once we get to this stage, then the picture on the right is typically in a finished parking lot. This just so happened to be a parking lot where they were going to redo their parking lot anyway. So they said, let us rip up the old parking lot. You do your thing, and then we'll come in and blacktop behind you. And on the right, when it's in a finished parking lot, we typically, after the purlins are in, we would work during the day, working with the school district, because that's the most productive. And we would try and take maybe 10 parking spaces at a time, you know, caution tape, put up a little fence, and the guys on lifts will work during the day and finish those 10 and just keep moving along systematically. If it's 6 spots, we'll accommodate, but the more we can work together as a team, the faster we can get it done. And I think once you start seeing the results, you're going to want it done faster and faster.
Just a question. So if we're putting these on Sequoia, what if the district sells Sequoia? What happens to these panels and what happens to the contract?
I mean, you'd be. I've never been
Maybe
asked
that's a
that question, but
question
I
for
would think
Chris,
you would
but-
sell it at a premium. That's a money generating item.
Not the building. We're losing money on that, I think.
No, I know. I'm saying with the solar, I mean, to me, that would be like, you're buying it.
Yeah.
You're going to pay a small premium because of the solar.
Yeah, I think that'd be included
Doesn't
in the purchase
preclude
price.
us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would
doesn't-
include it in the purchase price.
Okay. Perfect. Thank
Dana,
you.
you had mentioned, I think in the first list that Samoset was going to have solar panels as well, but that wasn't shown in the pictures. Is that just the front parking lot, or were we using any of the roof space for that?
Do you have Samoset on there?
Was it? We went quickly.
Yeah, it's both.
It's roof and
Yes. Sorry, the white roofs and then the front of the parking lot. It's middle school. They don't hit it that hard. Oh. It's a good question. Yep. We could probably. What? Yeah, we can rework it a little.
Something to be considered.
Yeah, we can move them if needed, shift them
Yeah,
around.
no, first baseline.
I mean, again, when I say they could take a punch, a foul ball hitting it probably wouldn't break it. I use the word probably. We have taken the panels and tried.
It's dozens a game. It's dozens.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. And again, this happens all the time at every school district, middle school, high school typically has these, and we try our best, but when it's prime space, we have taken panels ourselves, literally, and thrown balls at them to see if we could break it. With a baseball bat, you can break it easy, good swing, but a ball typically doesn't break it, but we could look to rework that and shift them down. We could do that.
Just a question going back to the Sequoia. Did you guys look at any other areas within the district that can support that 1.7 number that you had for Sequoia? Was there any other possibilities or no?
We looked everywhere and picked. There's a lot that goes into when you say look. You could see a field and say that's perfect, but you got to remember from far away you got to get that wire. It's your money. We try to spend it as smart as possible. You got to get that underground all the way to the meter, and sometimes the meter's on the opposite side of the building. So then it's like, are we going to go now around the entire building to hit the electric panel? Are we going to go over the top? If we go over the top, that's going to interfere with future rooftop work. You know what I'm saying? Every space is precious at a school district. So we try and pick the closest to the meter with the least amount of obstructions. You'd be amazed what's underground at a school district. It's a lot underground. That's the other thing. It's not easy to have a clean, you'd look at it and go, it's a straight shot. It's like, There's a grease trap underneath there. You have catch basins.
Yeah, we just have a
lot.
massive field at Tamarack that doesn't get used. So I don't know if that was even looked at. So
Off the top of my head, massive field at Tamarack. Do you know that one? We'll take a look at that.
Okay.
I don't
Do you
remember
want
off
to
the
go
top
back
of
to
my
the
head.
Tamarack picture? We can point it out.
What's that?
So where are you saying?
So that's all this way. You don't have it on the picture, but all the way up there is a massive field. Just thinking out loud, right? If that's an option, but
No, you know what? So like we said, we do want to go to contract as fast as possible.
yeah, no.
Not
And
'cause
we're
we think
changing
you folks are
configurations.
going
yeah.
anyway. No.
Yeah.
We're still waiting for interconnections to come back. Again, like we said, we applied for 3 to 4 buildings more than what we actually need. So if PSE&G could come back and say, no to Tamarack, we're not going to let you hook up no
Right.
matter what, because they control the world.
Yeah. Okay.
Vinny, that is
That
a
could be a
field
good
we
spot.
use.
Just curious.
We'll take a look at that and we'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
ASAP.
Thank you.
Meredith?
So you brought up a good point before, and I don't know if you realize it, but with Gate Lot, would there be any savings if we did everything at Gate Lot and we just turned that into like a little solar field?
What are the plans for Gate Lot? You know, you brought up
It's
the
open
idea.
right
Are
now.
you going to sell it?
But if we said, you know what, instead of trying to sell it, it would make us money if we just make it into a big, solar area, and that could be added to and get charging stations and things like that. And then you don't have to go all over district, and we don't have to touch roofs and things like that.
No, I get it. So going back to my other statement that I made is we're already zeroing you out. We would, if you wanted to do Gate Lot, we'd have to take away another one.
No, I'm saying instead of doing every place, could we do everything at one place instead of going building to building to building to
No,
building?
as you start to get bigger, think of it this way. If you have a strip with 6 plugs,
Mhm.
but there's 30 people in here and they all want to plug in, who's going to give us the most amount of money to plug in? That's exactly the way it works. As you get bigger and bigger, the grid is only so big, it can only support so much. And remember, we're tying into their grid and we're saying, oh, by the way, once we tie in, my bill is zero. I hate saying it's zero. They're not going to be making money off of you. So they don't want to give up their money making to you. So as it keeps getting bigger and bigger, their fees are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And at some point, I don't know if is it 5 megawatts? Is there a cutoff? 2? Yeah. So after 2 megawatts, they're like, no, that's it. Because now you're a power plant and they'll cut you off. It's a great idea. I mean, it really is. But then they're like, now they're competing with you. Like you said, you want to sell it to people. That's community solar at that point.
And are there any places that you picked a roof that you really could have picked someplace else instead of the roof? Like, I know you guys did an exhaustive search,
Yeah.
and I'm sure every place that you picked is the right spot for that
Yeah,
school.
you don't have a lot of good roof space.
No, I'm saying instead of a roof space, was there a different space that could have been used, but you chose a roof anyway?
Well,
Or a roof's just the best way to go?
they're the next to the ground mount. They're the least expensive.
Okay. And do you have a picture of the ground mount?
An artist rendering?
Yeah.
No, I didn't do it. Nobody's ever asked that question. No, no, that's typically at somebody's house. These would be 30 inches off the ground. Not that much higher. 30 inches, like big enough to get a goat underneath to eat the grass.
Mother of 3 boys, I have to think of
Yeah, no, I agree. Good question.
All right. Now you can go. You can move forward.
All right, so that was it for that. Just 2 other measures, and they really, I could show you pictures, but they get crazy. The energy management system in the school district right now is called Metasys. It is a proprietary Johnson Controls system. It was installed in the 90s because that's what everybody wanted back then. It was like the best money can buy. The downside to it, one, is it's proprietary. It means you can only buy it from Johnson, and Johnson can only service it. Sachem Schools was the only school district, I think, in the nation that could service it themselves. Not with the permission of Johnson, but the personnel you had here was so smart, for real. Ed Miller and these guys were They blew away my team. I brought my guys in here from Milwaukee, flew them out. I said, these guys can program. And they said, no, they can't. I said, come out to a meeting. We had a meeting in one of the temporary buildings, and the guys at on your side of the table blew my guys away. They're all gone, retired. It's not something you want to try and learn. There's another system out there called FX. It's called Open Protocol. If you wanted to do any expansion, put it out to bid. A dozen contractors on Long Island would bid on it. Everybody can buy it. Everybody can program it. It's easy for the school staff to learn to use, on the cell phone, whatever. It's the best way to go. It's going to save you millions and millions of dollars over time. So it's a great approach. That's why we decided. And also, I know Kerry Antondo would say no more proprietary equipment. And John Grillo said, rip that out and put in the other one. So it is the right way to go. And that saves almost $500,000 a year. And the one the last is called the variable frequency drive. And all that is it goes on top of a motor and it slows down the speed at which the motor turns on, again, to cut that demand down. Because without it, the motor just clicks on and demand shoots straight up, and then you just pay a big electric bill. That saves $75,000 a year. Questions on those? All right. This is almost the last slide. So, I know. Sorry. You think I like this stuff? No, I really do. I could stay here forever. So this is just a snapshot. And again, on the bottom, it says for illustration purposes only. What do I mean by that? We don't know exactly what the cost of borrowing is going to be. But working with Michelle and your fiscal advisors, we will come up with a plan when it comes out of the state as to what's the smartest way and most lucrative way for Sachem schools to pay for this. But based per the RFP, 4.5% interest with 66% state aid for a 15-year TELP, a tax-exempt municipal lease. The first year payment post-construction would be $6.4 million. At the end of that 15-year lease, it's $97 million. Second line item is energy savings. So year one, 2.7 million and change. At the end, 59 million, 888 in operational savings, almost 16 million at the end. State aid of 3 million, total of 45 at the end. Net cash flow, first year after construction, $216,000. At the end of the project, 23.6 million. That 23.6 million is net after you paid the 97 without the IRA money. So if the IRA money comes in, that 23 turns into $37 million the school district would make by doing this project. That's a powerful statement. All new boilers, all new lighting everywhere, new control systems, everything pays for itself. You're going to have the biggest solar system in any school district. The only one that's net zero. Literally, I'm going to try and get the governor here to give you guys an award. It's that special. I truly believe it. By doing this project, and it's going to make you money guaranteed in a contract by Ingram & Smith. I couldn't think of a better attorney to stand next to me, literally saying, this guy better give you everything he tells you tonight. Again, why I said for illustration purposes only, because they'll use it against me. But I do love these guys. They're the best, for real.
Rob, I have a
Questions
question.
on that?
Questions to the board? Steph?
Yeah. So that goes to year 18.
Correct.
Do we make money 20, 21, 22, 23? Did anybody figure
Forever.
that out?
Forever. Yeah. Well,
How
we
much?
we stop at 18 because it's an 18-year deal with the state.
Okay.
Another question that I didn't even think of, but along your lines, you're only paying the lease typically for 15 years. Sometimes your fiscal advisor will say, let's do a 20, an 18 or a 20 year. And you're like, it's like getting a 30-year mortgage versus a 15. You always want a shorter one. But if the IRA money is going to come in, it might make more sense to do a 20-year initially, get that first couple payments really small. Then when that check comes in, you re-amortize the loan, lower it to 15-year, and now you bad term, but you have a lot of money on hand at that point. So there's a couple different ways to do it. I'm not a financial advisor. Michelle Sarakis is phenomenal. She will get it done. I have no doubt in my mind. But yeah, so after 18, actually after year 15, you're done. It's all
All
that money
profit
comes to
then.
them.
Right.
Every
Okay.
year, millions and millions.
And then that will get reallocated. I'm looking at the wrong. It'll get reallocated to where we would need the money? Or would we put it in a savings to replace something or?
Well, it's cash flow. So by that point, you're not paying the expenditures anymore. It's just part of our fund balance.
Well, Meredith?
So Michelle, like how much would this lease cost us per year? And how would we, we would start, obviously it's got to go to the state, it's got to get all the approvals, which take forever.
Well,
When would all
apparently
this
these
start?
don't take forever. So I think it's 8 to 10.
A little less than forever, but it does feel like that, for real. Right now, the mechanical engineering review is 8 to 10 weeks, but architectural, we just found out, is like 14. I'm fingers crossed that with a few phone calls, maybe a favor here or there, it could get pushed along a little bit. But best case is probably maybe Thanksgiving, we could get a thumbs up to start the project. If not, it'll go into 26.
And how does it impact our budget annually?
Well, it wouldn't impact 25, 26, but then once the lease payments are on board, that's added debt service that we have to pay, and it also would factor into our tax levy. You would feel it in that first year when you take on the debt, because a $6 million exclusion would cause your levy to increase in that 1 year. Still be within the cap, but you would be looking at about a 5.5% increase in the levy for that 1 year.
And the lease that we'd be taking on would cost us about $3 million a year.
About $6 million a year.
6 million
in
a
the
year?
first few years, and then it starts to go down.
To that point, though, Michelle, I'm looking at the budget presentation tonight. The bonds for the buildings are coming off the books, what, in 30 and 31? So in essence, in about 5 or 6 years, theoretically, you'll free up 11 million?
Correct. So I brought the schedule for you because you ask me about that all the time. So for the first about 5 or 6 years, right now our debt service is about 13 million, not counting in the TAN.
Right.
So we would see about an additional 6 million for about 5 years, and then everything would start rolling off. And then by 29, 30 year, we're down to 12 million again, which is close to where we are now.
Mhm.
And then it drops down to 7 and then to 6 for the remaining years.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Alex?
So I guess it's the question for Michelle, but you're talking about not next year, the year after. We would be looking at a 7% increase to our community.
5.5.
Plus, is it plus the regular 2%?
No. That's the total increase.
And that would be something that they would vote on or they would not vote on?
Well, it would be part of the regular budget vote, but it wouldn't be, you wouldn't need a supermajority. This would be within the tax cap
So the community would have a say.
at 50.1% to pass it. Correct.
And if it fails, if the budget fails,
If the budget fails, well, we
We'd have to make cuts.
Well, if-
Reductions in the budget.
right. So that's if the board decided to move forward, then that debt service becomes an exclusion until it's paid off. It constantly goes into the levy and it's an exclusion. If the budget fails, you would have to go to a revote. You're still in that 1 year looking at that 5%. That's, simple majority.
yeah, I'm just saying, but what happens if that budget fails? We have to make that 5% up through cuts?
Yeah, Chris
Yeah.
is shaking his head, yeah.
Yeah.
But, the fallback is if we have to replace all the boilers, costs are going to continue to climb. We've got antiquated equipment. Look at the lights, right? So we have to sell to the community that
we
there's
all understand that.
benefits, right? The benefits, far outweigh, right? These are,
Well, we all understand that.
yeah. But if we don't need a supermajority, we're in pretty good shape, so.
Okay.
Any other questions? Meredith?
So to be clear, we are going to increase a little in the beginning and it's going to come back to us in droves in the end. So people who have younger children in district now, They're only going to feel it a little bit for a little bit of time, and then it's going to start to free up so much money that we will be in a much better position. Okay, so in your
Correct.
opinion, you're our financial person that we look to. You think that this is a solid, good way to move forward?
With the amount of work we need on our boilers throughout the district, there's no way that we could budget for those repairs
Right.
in our regular operating budget.
Okay,
This is
I
the way to
appreciate
go.
that. Thank you.
Alex?
I understand that this work needs to get done. I'm on board. We need to get the work done. But once we ask the community for the money, they're not going to ever feel it back. We're not cutting them checks ever back. So they're never, the seniors in our community, people on fixed incomes in our community, people who are living paycheck to paycheck in our community. Yes, it's a one-time hit at 5%, but it's not, they're never going to feel the refund on it. They're never going to feel the energy costs on the savings on it.
They'll feel it when the budgets don't increase so much year over year over year. I mean,
It's still going to go up 2% the next year, 2% the next year. So it's always, I mean,
But they're not going to feel.
when was
they're
the
not-
last time we put a zero up? That's my point. They're never not going to feel it. So I just want to be careful the way we word it to the community, because it's going to be a 5% hit. And then the next year they're going to get 2% again. And then they're going to get, it's never going to be zero. It may be net zero in energy, but it's not going to be net zero in budget to budget.
It's a question for Michelle.
I was
Just
going to ask her one
So
question.
just Michelle, so the alternative is we do a bond to pay for all of these capital repairs, right? Boilers and things like that, with perhaps a higher interest rate or another long-term bond, right?
Right.
So either
and
way,
then-
the community has to pay something because the buildings have to get taken care of.
Correct.
This
correct.
is the community. This is the reality, right? So
Michelle, what's
They
the
take a
average?
bond out.
This is the most economical way to do it because you're getting this positive cash flow. If we put out a bond and we just replace the boilers, we're not doing the solar and the LEDs that are going to generate the savings.
Meredith?
What's the average interest rate that we pay on bonds? And does that fluctuate?
Well, it fluctuates at the time of issuance.
It'll
So
probably go down now with President Trump in office, but since we already
Right.
bashed him 3 times tonight.
so the estimate we got right now is between 4.25% and 4.5% right now.
Okay, and is that an estimated? It could possibly go down because Trump's doing the right thing, but it shouldn't be more than 4.5%, in your opinion. I mean,
We ran it at 4.5%. And that's for a 15-year. That's what I was going to ask you. Yours is, so 15-year, again, talking about buying a house. If you were a young kid, couple, and you're going to buy a house, 15-year might stretch you. Nobody
Right.
said you have to do a 15-year. We just did it because that's what it asked for in the RFP. Like when I do projects on the East End, they get no state aid. To make a project cash flow, it's horrible. So typically, they'll go out for a 20. And then when the payments start coming down in the first 4 or 5 years, again, you're paying a little bit more in interest, but then they'll re-amortize them down to a 15,
Right.
or lump them in with some other bonds or whatever's coming off your books or coming down. You could, refinance, just like basically.
And-
with a
so you
house.
can
Michelle-
refinaance something like
It-
this, and there's
it's
no
called a
like,
refunding.
Just to clarify, Michelle, Federal Reserve controls the interest rates, right? Not the president.
Correct.
Just want to make that clear
Yes.
for everybody.
Correct.
But we wouldn't be locked in if we did take out a longer term to ease the pain in the beginning a little bit more. So we could take out a longer term than what you've proposed here.
Yep.
And we can do that in the beginning. It will ease the pain a little bit until we start seeing some more savings. And then there's no prepayment penalty. We could do what we need to do to
You
kind
could
of
you could
in house
refund the
terms
bonds.
refinance.
It's refunding.
In certain circumstances where I'd call it catastrophic, that you're worried about a 5% hit, we work with all the banks and we would tell them, like, look, the district's obviously going to be making a lot of money here, but in the very beginning, it's going to be tough. What can you do? And they'll say, well, maybe an 18-year, maybe a 20-year, and they know, and they would even say, we would do a 20, but we would look to quickly refinance it for you because you don't want to pay all those fees. But how about this? How about we don't make a full payment or even a half payment in the first 12 months? We make the lowest interest only in year one in that fiscal year, say 25, 26, or 26, 27. And then your first full payment could be due at the end of 27, 28. There's ways to stretch it out. to get as much savings and everything coming back to you on the books.
And the banks will want to be associated with us for the PR of it because of the
absolutely.
net zero. And you're going to
Absolutely.
sell that to them with that, right?
So
Trust me,
we could run various scenarios and see which way the financing
They will be
works out the
fighting
best.
for this project,
All right.
without a doubt.
So Michelle, either way, this is your recommendation. I mean, this is obviously not my first energy performance contract. I think it's probably number 3 for me, but it saved the district millions of dollars over a period of time.
Correct.
Yeah, so we would not be able to otherwise do those upgrades without having a significant, impact to the community.
Correct.
We have to go out with a bond. We'd have to get a separate vote. There's a chance that it fails, and then we can't do those necessary upgrades that we need to do. But in the end, I mean, we'll be able to reduce our budget lines in the areas of energy significantly.
Right. So the savings would be that we would reduce our energy lines, but we would be moving those initial payments to cover this debt.
Yeah.
And then the additional cash flow is extra on top of that. So in the beginning, we're just sliding it across to a different expenditure line until these leases are paid off.
Any other, Stephanie?
So we don't do this, and next year, half our boilers fail. Where does that money come from?
Well, if you have capital project money, that's where it would come from. But you still need.
But
you
we
still
don't
need
have
community
enough,
approval.
right, for
Yeah.
that. So I'm asking a real serious question, because you do this in your own home. If you're needing a new boiler and it's hanging on for dear life, and you wait, your bill's a lot more unexpectedly, even though it's expected, when you don't properly plan. So, I'm asking, if we're worried about the impact a year from now, but we're not looking at the long-term benefit. So if we do, knock on wood, have no issue, but what if the boilers all go at one time, which they possibly could because they're all really, really ancient, right? So that money comes from where?
You'd have to issue a bond.
Alex?
My only concern is what Mike said, is that, again, we need the work. I'm not against the work. But last year, we had to cut jobs. We threatened people's livelihoods. We threatened sports. And that was under 5%. And it went down. And I know that we probably could have passed it at 50.01 or whatever we needed, but 50 plus 1. But to Mike's point, if it fails, I don't know where we are. We're just going to put a bond out? Is that going to be the next thing that we do?
So if the board wanted to move forward with this project and we enter into the contracts and we move forward, now the project is happening, right? So we have to go out for the financing. So if the levy was high and the community didn't support it at a simple majority, those debt service payments still have to happen. That's why they're an exclusion in the levy. So if the budget went down twice and we had to go to austerity, you'd have to make significant cuts to programs because you have to make the debt service payments. There wouldn't be enough in reserves.
I just don't want to cut academic programs because we gambled and lost. I'm just concerned, that's all. Just a concern.
All right. Anything else? Any other questions? Yep.
One closing remark. I do appreciate all the time and phenomenal questions for real. To ease the thought on the borrowing, it's real. The banks are going to want to work with Sachem. This is a big job. I mean, all the big banks will be fighting for this. I guarantee it. And they're going to be as creative as they can be. This is not the first school district with this type of situation. I mean, again, here, half your boilers are bad, so we don't want to leave you like that. We're trying to help you. At the same time, we're trying to make you guys net zero, which is really cool, and give you all new lights. It's a great project. It's going to make you a ton of money. I guarantee you the banks will come up with a plan that will help Michelle meet all of your goals. The only thing I would ask, and this is for real, and this is the high pressure salesman, and I apologize, the tariffs, I'm not worried about. The IRA, I want to see you guys get that. That's tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars. The only way to safeguard it so far, what we're being told, is if Mr. Trump should decide to say, that's it, a year from now, I'm closing that down, Anybody who's under contract is in. We got to be under contract. We got to get this thing up to the state. I have the contract already written, and I'm putting pressure on Ingerman. If Carrie Ann was here, I wouldn't point at her. She'd get mad at me. But I'm going to ask the board to if you're going to move forward, let's do this quickly. It's in your own best interest. Those are millions and millions of dollars you could lose out on with the IRA. I mean, if it was a year ago, we would have guaranteed it because it's any typical rebate, it's there. But with the current situation the way it is, it's not guaranteed money, but it's sitting there. We should grab it. And the only way to do it is to go to contract. You do have another meeting this month that we could be ready for. I know that's crazy to put that pressure on Ingerman, but at a minimum, the first board meeting in March, you should try and get this thing done. And we're going to be working to get this right up to the state and get it approved as quickly as possible. Sorry, that was the high
Mike,
pressure.
and then we'll come back to Vinny.
This might be a question maybe for John. Wasn't there a mechanism where we could even though we could approve the contract ourselves, we'd get 50% state aid, but if we went out to the public for a vote and they approved it, we get 60% state aid?
If we went out, you're talking about voting in May as another proposition.
Right.
You could do another proposition and get an additional 10% state aid. The awkward thing about that is we would go to the community and say, vote for this, you'll get an additional 10% aid. If you say no, we're still going to do it because we don't need voter approval to do this. But if we're getting it through the state around May, and if it's not a big deal to put another proposition on the ballot, I don't know what your May ballot looks like, you could be at.
How much more? What does that 10% equal?
So without voter approval, it's 66.6%. With voter approval, 76.6
So what does that equate to in dollars? Do we
for the total project.
well,
What's the
7
total
million, I
cost?
guess, right?
Over 15 years.
Right, yeah. It's 70 times 0.766. I mean, with voter approval, we'd get back $53,620,000. Mm-hmm.
And one isn't contingent upon the other. We've done this at other school districts with Ingerman where we've gone to contract, submitted it, and just like John said, it is kind of awkward, but you're a strong board. You say to the public, look, we entered into a contract to help the school district, and we're going to make money off of it. If you vote yes tonight, we're going to get an extra 10% on top of everything. Vote yes, we get free money. Vote no, project's still going forward because it does not require voter approval, but you lose the 10%. You can do it.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we'd have to have that conversation separately. And
I agree.
So,
Vinny?
yeah, just two questions. So, Michelle, this is for you. So, in the beginning, we're literally just shifting expenses from our current energy to pay this lease, right? So, theoretically, it should almost offset it, or is the lease going to be higher?
It's supposed to be a net zero. It's supposed to be no cost to the district.
Right.
That's why you have that positive cash flow.
Right.
That's where that comes in. It's supposed to be if we had, $2.5 million in electric, we shouldn't have more than $2.5 million in lease payment.
Lease.
That's just an
So
example.
yeah, okay.
But they should zero out.
And the second question was more of financing. And I don't know, maybe for Johnson Controls, if you've seen this, we have some big debt coming off the books in 5 years. Is there a way to finance this or structure payments where we're pushing it out? We're back end loading it so it offsets sort of current.
That's
right?
how our current debt is structured,
Right.
where as it rolls off, we would have ones where we were making
So theoretically,
minimum
we can
payments.
structure, if the banks are
could
going to get creative,
right.
This way, there's really no impact in the short term. We're just pushing that, and it's maybe a little bit larger,
Yeah.
but we keep the same payments.
We
that
could work with
currently
our
have, and it's really not going to affect
we
us.
can work with our fiscal advisors on different scenarios.
So there's ways to do it. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll
Thank you, guys.
certainly,
Everybody.
take everything that you presented to us into
I know it was a
consideration.
lot.
Yeah, certainly we'll reach out to our legal team and, if the board is in approval, see how quickly we can get that contract
Okay.
done.
I appreciate everybody's time. Sorry, I know it went
That's
long.
all right.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Good seeing you.
Thank you. Mrs. Sarakis, are you ready for the budget presentation?
It's good when the-
Or you still have some people staying for you?
Can I just ask, can we have them get the contract to Ingerman so we can look at it, like get the ball rolling? If worst
Yeah,
case
we can-
scenario,
we
we
can
don't
request
have
Carrie Ann
five.
works with you guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she,
Carrie Antondo, I think you guys have met her once or twice before. She does all our energy performance contracts. These guys know her very well. She's, this is what she does.
so she could request it. So this way
If you
we
want,
can get
you want me to have her request it now, I can.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
And I believe the contract is Carrie Ann's template. It's
Yeah,
the one that she
we
drew up.
created these contracts.
Just one comment. So this is not a snap decision from the board. This has been going on for the better part of a year and a half. We
The-
started this conversation, right? So
The
it's,
first presentation
right,
that Mr. Grillo gave on the EPC was September of 2022.
right. So it's been a while in the works.
I was
And
out with
we're
my
coming
first
to
audit
sort of the
program.
natural conclusion of a long process, right?
Correct.
Rob and I have gone to meetings separate from the
No, I just
board,
want the
too.
community to
Yeah,
know this has
no.
been out there for a while. We've been having these conversations,
That's something
RFPs,
that's
down
going on.
selection,
No,
things
and,
like
and
that.
Mike, right? You were at those meetings. So there's been a lot of input with this.
So to be clear to everybody out there, we would get the contracts to Carrie Ann. Carrie Ann would get them to us. We would review them, and there is a possible chance that we could put it on our next
Sure.
meeting at the end of February, and then we would all vote. And if it passes, we could be able to get the ball rolling pretty soon.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thanks.
You're up, Michelle.
Okay, budget draft number 2. So tonight we're going to just review
Your microphone.
our, yeah. Yes, it is. Hello. Can you hear me? It's on. No. We're going to review a quick overview of our revenue summary that we really covered at the last meeting. Proposed capital projects, that's why Mr. Grillo is still here. And then we're going to review some of our expenditure codes. A little different than we've done in the past. We have the salary all in one chart, so you can see salaries across the whole district. And then we're going to be covering the general support, the non-instructional items, which are the general support, transportation, benefits, debt service, and interfund transfer. And then we'll discuss our next steps. So we went over the revenues at the last meeting where we had our state aid figures, our other revenue, and our tax levy. In the chart, I did leave the reserves and appropriated fund balance amounts blank so far for this current year because until we finalize what the actual budget number is, we don't know how much would be appropriated from either unassigned or our reserves. So that's left blank for right now. So our total revenues as of right now are $366 million. One thing that might be coming up as a change, and Mr. Sachs is actually working with Mr. Renda on this. You want to talk a little bit about E-rate real quick?
Sure. We're looking into a revenue source called E-rate. E-rate is where the district would receive approximately 50% back on certain instructional technology components, such as basic maintenance of hardware and software. So we're working on that. We're looking at we have a $2 million pool out there right now for next year, of which we could possibly get back 50% of that. So we're looking at another revenue source of $1 million for next year at this point.
So once we get some more information from E-rate, there wouldn't be any new expenditures associated with that. E-rate would be covering some of our technology line items that currently exist. Normally, you have to put the new expenditure in to get 50% back. These are called Category 2, and we've received approval on the list from that Mr. Renda and Mr. Sachs have worked on together. So those expenses already exist in the budget, and we could possibly get $1 million back on them. So that would just be an additional revenue. So instead of $366 million in revenue, now we have $367 million.
Is that a ongoing revenue source, Ron, or?
Discussion with our E-rate advisors. Once we go through this 25-26 school year, $1 million, it should kick in again for the next few years.
It's like a 3-year
It's a
cycle.
right. It's a 3-year cycle.
Okay.
So
We've tapped into E-rate before, right?
Yes.
In years past?
we've used E-rate funding at a minimal basic somewhere around $50,000 to $75,000 a year for Category 1 technology initiatives such as internet.
Is that new?
Category 1 is existing. Category 2 is something we're just getting into now.
So you could see at the bottom, right now for 25-26, the budget number is at 379 million, which is showing us a $12.4 million gap. That's gone up about $1 million from our last presentation. And I did indicate that we're still building the budget. There are still several items that have to go into that. But the additional million, that came from things like our BOCES copier leases are approximately $278,000, some testing and scoring for $213,000, and our BOCES fees for our library were about $302,000. So that makes up part of that increase from the last presentation. We do have a few other items that we're looking at, and then we should have some final numbers for next time.
Correct. At this point, we just want to really impress on you that it's still a work in progress. For example, on February 13th, the BOCES portal is going to open up. That's when we're going to really know percentage increases, things of that nature, actual costs. So we're going to go back into the budget and we're going to rework the BOCES lines. So you're going to see a little fluctuation in that area. Additionally, we still have some supply lines and contractual lines that we have to fill in the blanks to.
So
And
that
again, Michelle, this is only what we have to do to run the district.
Yes,
This is no
required
extras that
and
were at 12
mandated.
million.
Right, required and mandated expenditures, and we'll get a little more into that in some of the coming slides. But I wanted to just reiterate that included in our tax levy is the exclusion for capital projects. So I've spoken about this in the past where we say we have that transfer to capital line item for $9 million. I won't get offended. You have school tomorrow. In our expenditure, we have the transfer to capital. We budget $9 million. And, people can say, well, if you just cut that $9 million out, that would help close this budget gap. But that's not the case because that $9 million expenditure has an offsetting revenue. That $9 million is also included as part of our tax levy. So if we took it out of the expenditure, we take it off of the levy. It does not help us close that gap. And more importantly, it does help us maintain our buildings. We have 15 buildings. We look at the work we need in the project we were just talking about. There's ongoing maintenance work that we have to do.
So Michelle, just a question. So I know you said we're going to get to it. I don't see it in the slides, but 12.4 million just to run the place, right? I think we got another 4.5+ million in extracurriculars.
So
in essence, we're looking at almost a $16 million gap.
If we
put everything back in.
Okay.
Correct. I just want to get that out now while we're talking about it. Yep. Thank you.
So why I have Mr. Grillo sitting here is we're going to talk about some of the proposed capital projects. And I thought if there were any questions on what we were proposing, he could help answer. So again, we have about $9 million in transfer to capital, and we still have roughly $1.6 million in the capital reserve. So working with Mr. Romeo, our director of facilities, and Mr. Grillo, we were coming up with a list of, we have that $170 million list of projects throughout the district. We asked Mr. Grillo to come up with a list that what were the most pressing items. So this list totals more than $15 million. We almost wanted to just give the board a menu of, here are some possible projects. We have to get it down to the $9 million that is in our transfer to capital. And if you wanted to go out and use part of the capital reserve, we do have $1.6 million in there. One item that's not included in there right now, and it will be in the next one, is we're looking at, we may need to purchase 2 additional buses. You know, we did a whole fleet replacement over the past several years, but there were 2 spare buses that were not replaced, and they're from early 2000s, and they're diesels, and they're really not in reliable condition right now. So we may be looking to include the purchase of 2 buses, natural gas buses in there.
What is the cost of that?
The buses are about $140,000 each.
Okay, and
140.
then natural gas, is that the
They're
last
gas
buses?
buses. So we have until 2027 currently. That would be the last time you can purchase the fossil fuels without having to switch over to the EVs. But it looks like you can apply for an extension of 2 years if this doesn't get pushed
Any reason why we're
further.
not going with a diesel versus
We wouldn't look to
natural gas?
purchase another diesel. We would look to purchase two gas buses.
Michelle, just a question on the list. On Tecumseh, we're responsible for electrical, even though BOCES, we have that leased. So
It's,
I guess
it's
we're
the main service. It's our building.
Okay.
So that's the electrical main. I can't tell you what's included in that.
And how did that become a priority if it's not a building? I guess if
Because it's blown.
it's needed, it's needed.
We've
but-
blown phases twice in the past year
Mm.
where we've had to either have our guys working to repair it or calling in somebody to repair it.
So it's the incoming electric service from the street. There'll be a primary line that comes to this transformer, new transformer and switchgear, and then the secondary lines that basically go into the building. Anything inside the building, we're not touching, but it's basically from the pole into the building. That whole service needs to be replaced.
Yep, Alex?
John and Michelle, of all of the work, I mean, aside from what we just heard from Johnson and Controls, of all the other list, this is the best, this is the most needed immediately. This is high priority. It's got to get done, in your opinions.
Correct, yep. Yep, especially the east pool.
Okay.
The HVAC work at the pool.
What's the condition of the roofs? I see roof replacements, and that, I mean, that sounds to me like something we gotta. That's weatherization, right? So,
Yeah, so our two biggest items here in the whole district right now are roofs and basically site work and parking lots. This will finish Samoset and Sagamore. We still have to hit all of Seneca. And then as you saw some of those pictures, we've been picking and choosing which roofs to do. We really finished all the roofs in the district set back in the last round of solar in 2016, where they put solar on all of the roofs that were kind of near the end of their existing warranty. It's probably extending the useful life of all of the single ply EPDM black roofs. But once they go, part of the cost is now going to be take off all the solar panels, store them, clean them, replace the roof, and then put them back. So I'm afraid that a lot of the savings the district has gotten over the last 6, 7, 8 years is going to be used to now taking these off and putting them back on. Right now, they're not leaking. They're all out of warranty, but knock on wood, a lot of the black roofs aren't leaking. The ones that have the solar on it, and to Danny's point before, he said a lot of times they're actually protecting the roofs because they're sitting in big ballasted pans. But it is something we're going to have to look at.
Any other questions? Alex?
I guess maybe this might be a question for legal, but in any of the contracts that we have with BOCES, is there any mechanism for us to raise rents if capital improvements have to be done at a certain level?
Without taking a look at the contract,
I know,
I wouldn't
put you
know.
on the spot, but I know at work we deal with this in apartment complexes and condo complexes where all of a sudden they get this huge increase and they don't understand if it's legal or not. And there are verbiages in New York state law that says if capital improvement work reaches a certain level, that they are allowed to raise rents to make up some of the costs of the necessary work
It does say in the lease that we're responsible
for all of it.
for the mechanical.
Just make sure we don't ever sign that again.
Okay.
okay.
So-
Just one question, Michelle. North Pool ceiling and lighting. I guess that's not part of our EPC, right? No.
The north. So
The lighting's not being replaced as part of the Johnson thing.
No.
Okay.
No. So touching on the salary codes, this is all salaries district-wide. I didn't break it out by the different, where we usually cover instructional with the instructional codes. This is everything district-wide. We're at 177 million. That's roughly 1,900 general fund staff members. And we've included in the salaries the stipends for the extra class activity fund treasurers, and that was about $46,000 because we're required to have those treasurers to monitor those cash funds because it's student money. And then salary expenditures, we will be making some adjustments now that the salary notices have gone out. So as we get notified of people retiring, we'll pull, that staff member out. And if it's a position that has to be replaced, we'll budget for the replacement of that person. But important to note, the thing that is not included in salaries are any of our coaching or chaperoning salaries and stipends, because that was not one of our mandated dollar amounts. So you'll see $2.3 million is not included in the salaries at this time. So general support, that includes all the Board of Ed, district clerk, superintendent lines, the business office, all the operations, personnel, facilities, security, data processing, and then our district-wide insurance. A couple of things to note out of these codes, you'll see in our facilities line items, it looks like it went up $374,000. That is mostly due to our utility costs, which would be addressed in the EPC. We would see that come down. And then an increase in our general liability insurance, which is something that's through NYSER. We have looked to go towards other options to see if we could save money. And quite honestly, Sachem is just too big. The other insurance don't want to touch us. So what's not included in here is we did not include any travel or conference expenditures for any of the line items up there. We did not include any general office supplies. We've included paper. We know everybody needs paper, but we know everybody hoards their pens, pencils, and general supplies. And we took out the student accident insurance because that is not a mandated item in these general support lines.
So question, Michelle, so you took it out of here, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't need it. That's a conversation that we have to have.
Right. So what we're looking to include in the budget is everything that is either required
Right.
or mandated. Then once we get to the next presentation, we'll cover all of our instructional codes and we'll with all the remaining, which is
Right.
all of our instruction and
And I just want
student
everybody to
support.
know that even though you've pulled it out, we have to have
It's
a
a
discussion
conversation.
on
Right,
what are we
right.
doing with this and
Because
where do we
then
give and take.
we will have
Yeah.
a presentation that says, here are all the items that we took out.
Right.
How do we want to put them in? How do we want to fund them? So
Got
we were just trying to
Yep,
show
no, I understand. It's great.
what's
I like
not
it.
required or
So,
mandated. So then for transportation, you'll see that the largest increase is just in our contract transportation lines. Mr. Sachs and I are meeting with our contractors in the next couple of weeks just because we're seeing an increase in our expenditures for this current year due to, splitting of routes and adding of routes that has just is putting us in a deficit position for the current year. And we're going to do some negotiating with them for next year.
Just a question on transportation.
Sure.
So in the transportation, is this, are we providing more than we're legally responsible to provide?
Yes, because our
Okay.
mileage limits are less than the state requirement, and that's voter approved. The district can't just change those mileages. That would have to be put out to a community vote.
So do we have the ability then so we don't have the ability to change that? Or
Well,
we're
you'd have to
giving
put
more
it out
right now.
to-
We can pull it back without voter approval.
No, I believe you need,
Any change needs voter approval.
So, but you just said we're giving more than we're legally
so
responsible.
I think that had to be a community vote to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know when that
No,
would
it's
have been.
There's a legal threshold.
Right.
And then the voters, through referent propositions.
But we're not giving anything more. We're giving what we're legally responsible to give. We're not getting extra.
We're
So if the-
giving extra. So I believe the limits are for K through 5 or 6, it's a half a mile. And then it's, what is it, 1.5 miles?
And you're saying we need referendums to prove what we're giving away that we're not supposed to be giving away? Help me understand. To change it.
To change it,
Establish different limits.
She's saying that the law is a mile. You're asking if we're giving less. It was already approved, so our law is what it says now.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not giving more than that. Our
Right.
our current law
That's
is
not
right.
what I understood. We were giving
Right.
more than we're supposed to give.
No.
So our limits are less than the state requirements. So if the state says at a secondary student,
Okay,
you
so
can
we
walk
made
for a
the,
mile
we're,
and a
gi- okay,
half,
we
the
made our own
board-
law.
Correct.
And now, okay,
correct.
so now we're
And-
kind of stuck with that. The state,
Correct.
okay. So so
Correct. And that results in the non-allowable pupil decimal. When we file our financials every year, there's a calculation where the state takes into account what we're doing under their limits, and then we don't get aided for that.
Okay. Crazy.
So in terms of transportation, we have to give to school and home to school, like from school home.
Right.
Beyond that, we don't have to.
Correct.
So club buses, athletic buses, things like that, we can.
Oh.
And do you have a number for that?
Well, we took out
Is that
field,
down there or that?
field trips, athletics trips, and music trips were $125,000. We took that out. What's not included are the club buses,
Right.
because right now we're running the clubs. Actually, that's a good point. We have to look at removing what those club buses would be.
Yeah.
I think last year we were able to cut them in half, and that was a savings of about $700,000.
Right.
So it'd be roughly
Around
another
that, okay.
700.
Yeah, Vinny, and then come back.
So Michelle, the numbers for transportation, that already takes into account the changes we made for this year. We didn't go back to where we were, because this year we made some changes to after-school buses,
We kept the routes the same, yeah.
right, which was
Yeah,
already a
it's
reduction
all-
from the year before.
Right.
So we didn't go back.
We didn't go back
Okay,
to, yeah.
thank you.
Everything that's being proposed in 25-26 is based on the reductions of 24-25.
And Alex?
This athletic bus, this is not about going to an away contest. This is just home after school?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And Meredith?
Michelle, for the next presentation, would you be able to give us, if we put it out to a vote to the public, to go back to the mandated 1 mile, what would that look like as far as money? And how many students does that affect?
That wouldn't affect the next school year, because that vote would happen
Following year.
the same night as the budget vote, and
Okay.
the budget would already have been adopted. We wouldn't be able to adopt a budget at the lower mileage rates because that hadn't been approved yet. So any change would be for 26-27.
Okay, if
But
if
we
you
could
can
try to
do
work
it,
something out.
because to be proactive, because we're gonna have these problems for the next couple of years probably, so.
Okay.
Michelle, can you go back to Alex's question? I thought the athletics did include travel to and to games. It wasn't just after school. I believe we talked about it being to the contests as well. No?
What we're,
The 125.
well, that's not all athletics. I think 75,000.
No, but it does include traveling to games. Alex's question was, is this just after school buses or is it because
Well, we
teams are
did the
traveling?
reduction with the
The scrimmages and
the
the
scrimmages
non-league.
and the non-league.
But my
right.
question is,
But
I mean,
there's
I get,
season games.
I
This
can't
is
imagine
included.
that our liability wouldn't go up if we have kids driving to away games. We can't really run an athletic program if we're going to put
No,
kids
the-
in cars to drive to
The
games.
same transportation that we're providing this year
That is included in
is-
that number though, Alex.
It is.
Yes.
But me and Patty seem to be on the same page, and I don't know what's happening.
So
So-
that's why this would be the conversation, because right now we don't have athletics in here. So we're just making you see that this is the cost
Oh,
of
right, right, right.
transportation for athletics, field trips.
Right, there's
music
no
events.
athletics in
There's
this
no
budget
athletics
yet.
in the
And while
budget.
I appreciate that it's being broken out, you cannot run an athletic program if we're not going to have buses. You cannot put kids in cars to Brentwood and Walt Whitman and William Floyd and Riverhead and
Right.
ask them to drive underclassmen. That is
But there's no athletics in
Right.
this
There's no
budget.
Right now,
athletics.
with the
That's-
numbers she's showing,
that's the
there's no
conversation.
athletics
That's
at all.
just showing you
At all.
the cost of what it
So-
is. Just like when you get to the athletics, you'll see the cost of what
Oh,
athletics costs.
I'm glad we took a picture of women in sports tonight. Then I mean, is this even a conversation that we're going to have? We can't we can't run a school district like this. I don't understand. I don't understand.
So what you have in here is just mandated items.
Non-mandated items.
Non-mandated items right now is not part of the
Correct,
number.
correct. And that's the conversation.
Right.
like-
The reality is, to Alex's point, sports is going to, we have to have that discussion. It's going to go back in at the expense of something else. Something else has to
Correct.
come out. That's,
So as
I
we-
think, why you broke it out like this.
Correct.
So the public sees what we're on the hook for without doing anything. And then, by the way, we have all these extracurriculars, which we really need to
Right.
do,
So we
but
have
something
12
has to give on the other side.
We have
So,
$12.4 million gap, and that is all our required and mandated items.
crazy.
So that gap has to be closed. And then we have about another $4 million, $4.5 million in non-mandated items, which includes our clubs, includes our field trips, includes our athletics. So if we want those also, that's the conversation of what are we going to put in? What are we taking out? How are we going to fund it? How much reserves? How much fund balance? that's going to be the
Yeah,
conversation in the
my
next
point
couple.
was is that we talk about a portrait of a Sachem student a lot. You can't compete with other school districts if we don't offering clubs. If we're not offering sport, like if my resume says I'm 3-sport varsity athlete, I'm student government, I'm whatever other club, and we go to the Sachem kid and it's, we cut it from 9 periods to 8 periods, and they're not getting anything. That's not feasible.
Right.
I'm not
But it's-
yelling at you, Michelle.
No,
I'm
I
just
know
saying
that.
I'm just
But
in
that's-
general.
That's
That's
money.
worst case
That's the
scenario.
money.
Yeah. Stephanie?
This information was also requested because there was some talk in the community that we didn't cut anything last year, that it was all smoke and mirrors. So we asked for this information to be delineated out of the other fund, for what was mandated, because we did feel impact, but for some reason the communication with the community isn't there's a disconnect.
Sure, we should give the numbers out of the people who don't work here anymore. I mean, there was cuts made.
Right.
There was real
right,
cuts
but
made.
we're going to show that now,
Yeah.
where last year we didn't break it out like this.
You can continue.
All right. So the next is the employee benefit line. And here you'll see this includes our retirement system for both the ERS and the TRS. These are our payroll taxes and our various insurances. We talked about this at the meeting in December. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. Under the teacher retirement system, you'll see a decrease of $336,000. We just received notification from the TRS unit last week. They provide us with a possible range of what they think the increase is going to be. And we were budgeting at the higher end of that range. And they came out last week and said that we should be using a 9.59%. So once we factored that in, we have this decrease in the TRS. Again, Social Security based off of our salaries, workers' comp, life insurance. These are all our regular benefits. I just want to highlight a couple of things in case anyone didn't see the December presentation. Long-term disability, we're seeing a large increase there. That's because we were self-funded through JJ Stannis. They stopped managing our self-funded plan. We had to go out to a fully funded insurer for that, and we're seeing an increase of $300,000, almost $285,000 with that fully funded plan. Within the next couple of years, once we have an experience rating and they see that while we have 1,400 staff members that could be eligible for the disability plan, we currently have 8 on disability. So that really should affect our experience rating.
So
Questions?
the
Mary?
way that you said that you use the higher number, the 10.11 for the TRS
10.11 is the current year.
is what you used, right?
No, that's
then-
24-25.
Right, but that's what you used when you were doing a proposed budget.
We used 10%. It was between 9.5 and 10%.
Okay.
So we used 10%.
And then it came in truly at 9.59, so that saved us a little bit of money.
Correct.
However, on ERS, it seems we used 15.2% as our factor. and
15.2% is the current 24-25 rate. 16.5% is the rate. It's not an estimate. They already told us that will be the rate.
So
for
that's
next year.
definitely going up and changing 8.35%.
Correct.
And there's nothing that anybody could do about it, and it's a definite number now.
Yes. Yes. When we get down to medical and dental, it's important to note here, we know that the medical premiums came in much lower than anybody expected. And when we look at with the staff givebacks from all of the bargaining units, we're only seeing approximately a $266,000 increase on the medical, the night shift side of the house. But one thing I wanted to point out under these medical benefits when we talk about these unfunded mandates, when we look at our Medicare Part B reimbursement, for the current school year, we are paying $4.8 million in Medicare Part B reimbursement. It's estimated to go up to $5.7 million for the next school year. That's based on the increase in the monthly premium is going from $174.70, I believe, to $185 a month. And then we have about 1,500 retirees, and we factor in who's turning 65 in the coming year, and we prorate that amount. But we have no say in that. That's $5.7 million.
Vinny?
So Michelle, just to comment on that, because that's a issue that the legislative committee's trying to take up, but that's for retirees and spouses.
If they take family insurance
Mhm.
and they don't receive reimbursement from somewhere else, so if If you're on our plan for family and you're a retiree and you get your Medicare premiums reimbursed and your spouse is a teacher in another district getting reimbursed from that district, they don't qualify. It would only be you. But if they're not working in another district or, there's no other reimbursement, then yes, we have to reimburse the spouse.
And just to
as well.
clarify, so when somebody retires, so they go to the state system, but this is sort of a straggler that's left behind for us to pick up? How does that work?
No, so our retirees can take their medical insurance into retirement. But once they turn 65 and they have to enroll in Medicare, Medicare becomes their primary and NISHIP is their secondary. They have to pay their premiums towards that Medicare. The state has said, civil service, NISHIP has said, we are required to pay those Medicare Part B premiums for those retirees that are on their plan. And that includes the basic contribution, and it also includes something called IRMA, where it's income adjusted. If your income is higher in retirement, you'll pay a higher premium towards Medicare. We have to reimburse that higher premium.
Rob, I mean, just so Michelle, so people people understand what we're talking about on the outside. Unlike most people who are 65 or on Medicare, they pay a premium. It comes out of the Social Security check. State employees, they pay it out of their Social Security check, but twice a year, or once a year now, the person they worked for, the state agency they worked for, has to reimburse them for that whole 12 months of payment they made to the federal government.
Correct.
And we have no choice but to do it. And it costs this district $5.7 million, almost $5.8 million a year now.
Correct.
And that's another expense that we have no control of. We just have to pay it. So that's why I don't know if people understand how that's working, but that's what's happening.
Correct. Okay. All right. So here's our debt service schedule. And as we talked about with the energy performance, we can structure debt, to minimize the impact to the taxpayers. But these are the years that our bonds will be rolling off our books, we call it. But I actually do have the detailed schedule. So if you wanted to take a look at that and see how some of our notes were structured, we did structure them in a way that as one falls up, then the next one picks up. So it kept like a level amount of debt outstanding. So
Questions?
Interfund transfer. We have our interfund transfer to special aid. That's the district's portion of the extended school year program. And then this is that transfer to capital, the $9 million, which we talked about in the beginning of the presentation. So in summary, these budget appropriations account for $337 million. That's about 89% of our budget so far. If you have any questions on that, just at our next presentation, which will be February 26th, we'll focus on the remainder of, it's called the 2000 codes. Those are all of our curriculum and instruction and student support services. And then we'll break out the BOCES because we'll have those numbers. Mr. Sachs and I are going to work on that over the next week where we can show you in detail, what we're paying for. And then,
Question?
then we could look at the mandated versus non-mandated.
Yeah. So for our next one, I may be jumping ahead a little bit, but could we start to get a draft budget to close that gap? Because it sounds like we're building, right?
So we should be done by the next presentation because any changes after that should be minimal.
Right.
They really wouldn't impact. So we'll know the number then.
Because I'd like to see from administration, how are we going to close this, right? Recommendations for staffing levels, things like that, right?
Yep.
To Alex's point, we've got a lot of things to put back in that are student impacting, right?
Correct.
And then we've got to offset it somehow. So I'd like to start to
Yes.
see that sooner rather than later, because I don't want to get in the same situation we were in last year.
No, and Mrs. Trombetta and we talked
yeah.
about this yesterday. We want to get that started on the next presentation. We don't want to get to April and say, hey, look,
Right.
this is what we're cutting. No, we're going to start the conversation on the 26th.
Okay, thank you.
Meredith?
So I just need a little clarity on, so the pre-K, 234,000. That's completely gone because of the negotiation that you were able to do. So for next year, UPK won't cost us, the district, something out of our pocket like it has in years past.
Yeah, correct.
That's correct, Meredith, but we're facing the same thing the
But-
following year.
You're
Yeah, that-
following it will if we don't get the governor to change the way that she does
The
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 allocation.
funding,
Allocation.
the allocation.
Yep.
we need to make that clear for sure that
Right.
this is a one-time band-aided fix for 25, 26, right? Otherwise, it's be the same boat next year.
And just because I've had quite a few questions, there was a gap between what we were allocated per pupil and what we actually pay out per pupil.
Correct.
And that hasn't changed in 18 years?
Yep.
Okay. So everybody's costs have gone up tremendously. The children that it started to change for are now out of high school. And then we got this lump sum, but we could only use it in a per pupil, but we don't have enough room to use that big lump sum for every per pupil. And even if we did, we still have a gap between what we're given and what it costs us.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to get everybody who this will affect to understand that it's not us, it's that big gap, and it's the way that the governor is doing
The allocation.
the allocation.
Correct.
So just
Thank
Merit, to tag on to what you said, just because there's misconceptions in the community about this, even if we had the space, let's assume that we were on the hook, that Scope and
Right.
Patty didn't come to an agreement, right? Which we're thankful for that, the fact that they did.
Right.
That gap wouldn't be 230,000. If we were to use that whole 3.1 million, our gap would be closer to $360,000
Right.
because
Right.
we're paying $600 a kid.
Correct.
So there's
And
a
not only are we
misconception out
paying
there
it-
that this board is not doing the right thing.
Right.
We're doing the right thing as it relates to UPK, and credit to administration for negotiating with
Yes.
Scope and Scope coming to the table, right?
And not only are we paying that, but I know every parent out there will say, I'll pay the 600 because I would do the same thing, but they're not
We're
allowed,
not
to
allowed
pay the
to.
600.
We're not
So
allowed
not
to.
only is the governor telling us that they're going to give us less money per student, but then when the parents are benevolent enough to say that they would like to make up the difference, they're not allowed.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just a point of clarification, it's doesn't cost the state any more money to
Right.
change the allocation.
Right.
It's not like they're allocating more money, but the thing is, we cannot continue to offer the same services as
Right.
we did in the 2006, 2007 rates. We just can't. So,
And it is as
so when we talk
absurd as
about
it
free
sounds.
UPK, it's not really free UPK because taxpayers are picking up the burden of the
Right.
difference. They're picking up the $230,000.
Well, the
Correct.
general fund, that's the point. We don't want to spend anything out of our general
But
fund
once
to
again, most
subsidize
of
that.
our funding comes from taxes.
Right.
Tax levy. So it's still being paid for by taxpayer money.
If you have to subsidize it.
Yeah, if you have
Right.
to subsidize. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right, so.
Michelle,
Any other questions?
can I,
Mike? go ahead.
Michelle, can you go back a couple slides? Go back to the revenue slide, I guess. Right there. So I just want to read this slide correctly. So right now you're saying to us that just to cover the things that we have contractual obligations for, things that are mandated and things that need to be paid, like our debt service, our budget would be 379,132, up $4.757 million from last year. That's
Yes.
the first part of that. All right. So you're saying that in addition to that, from our revenue side, based on our state aid, based on the other revenue, not counting if Ron could come through another $1 million, and the tax levy at exactly the cap, we come up with, and not appropriate anything from the reserves right now, you would have 366 million. So that's $7.7 million plus the 4 above this year comes to 12.463. So right now you'd say to us, I have a $12 million gap just to pay for things that we're contractually obligated for and mandated to pay, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, the unappropriated fund balance, last year we had $9.2 million left over. I know you have a run rate going. Where are we standing with that, Ronald?
I just completed a report this morning. We're at approximately $11 million.
Okay, so
We're at 6 on the expenditure side and 5 on the revenue.
okay. And how is that looking to carry over the next 4 months?
The revenues are pretty certain.
Are pretty solid. The expenditures I'm looking at are pretty solid also. I'm being very positive that we may be able to increase the expenditure side a little bit more.
Okay.
It's still a little early to look for trends and whatnot, but
But the $5 million in revenue, we're pretty certain on.
pretty certain that was 1.1 million in state aid above our budget. we had about 2.5 million in, what was it? I wish I had the report.
The BOCES
The BOCES refund.
we budgeted $750,000. BOCES will tell you every year, do not budget their refund because you can't count on it. And every year, so we budgeted $750,000 because you always get something.
Right.
But the last few years they've been giving us more.
And we received
So just under 2.5 million.
$2.5 million.
Right.
Okay.
They said this is the last year though to see something that large, but so that
Okay.
was a big hit to our revenue.
Okay.
And then what was it? The interest expense. We're
Another 2 million in
anticipating another
interest
2 million.
expense.
So you're confident 8
Hold
to
on,
10?
guys, this conversation's going. I think it's
Oh,
hard to
so-
hear. If we could just keep them
So you're confident 8 to 10, right?
Pretty
Okay.
confident, yeah.
So that number on appropriated fund balance now on the left side is blank. I put 9 in there, right? You'd say 9, for argument's sake. So now you're still looking for about $3 million to get to where we are, just contractual and mandated.
Correct.
Now, the other slides you had numbers like 2.2 million for everything else that's not in there. How much does that total up to that's not in there?
It's about 4.4 million.
Okay. So the 12 for right now is really like 16.8.
8.
Okay. You probably can close 10 of it, 9 or 10 of it.
Mhm.
So now you're looking at 6 that we need to come up with. That, I mean, this is all going back to the conversation we had
Yeah.
probably back in November, right? We said,
Mhm.
so that's going to become down to where we're going to find that money. We're going to find it in, you either got to cut, you got to use reserves, or you got to pierce the cap.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. So
Those are conversations we're going to be
that's a
having
conversation we're going to be
relatively
having.
soon.
Okay.
Alex, your question?
Just looking for some clarity, and I apologize for the
No,
side
no worries.
conversation because
Okay.
when you said 11 million, that's that. You guys wrote 9.2 up here, but you said 11.
No. This is this current year where we think we're going to close out the current year.
Okay.
Surplus.
So now people watching at home and looking at this say that we're in a $12.4 million gap, and you're saying that we're going to close it at $11 million that we didn't spend.
Well,
I'm just asking for clarity
It
because
looks
it sounded
about
very confusing when you said that.
about $6 million in money we didn't spend and $5 million in unanticipated revenue. So like I was saying, we budgeted $750,000 for BOCES refund because they tell you it's not guaranteed. And in my meeting yesterday, they said refund checks are going out and ours is just under 2.5 million. So that's 1.7 million in unanticipated revenue. Then the 1.1 million in state aid related to some of our homeless students and
It was building aid, little building aid,
and
some homeless aid, some chapter tuition aid,
Right.
on high cost aid.
so
on-
things that we can't anticipate. The homeless students, we don't
Sure.
know
So
a number.
maybe
ahead, Mike.
to help.
Go ahead.
So last year we had $9.2 million left over.
Yeah.
All other things being equal, she's saying we'd only have 6 this year. Right.
Okay.
However, we're probably going to have more because things came in. We got paid for things we weren't anticipating.
Yeah.
So that's going to drive that unappropriated fund balance up. Right. So she's saying, okay, so now I should have just have 6, but now, wow, these guys just sent me a check for 2.5 million. I can now include that. So now that 6 becomes 8.5. The other 1.5, like she's bumping up, not because we did some great planning. We only managed to turn that 9.2 into 6. But there were things that came in that we weren't anticipating when she first put the budget together. So yeah, that's going to really be helpful. But I still think even if that number is 10 and we want to put everything back in that we have today, all those red numbers she's got, we're still looking probably at 4.5, maybe 5,
Maybe a little more, Mike.
maybe a little more, maybe
Probably, yeah.
6. So there's still got to be some tough decisions made to get to everything we have today.
Yes.
Right. So
Alex, that answer your question?
It does. I just, when we have kids coming to board meetings about talking to us about clubs, and we still underspent the budget by over $6 million, how do we look them in the face and say we don't have the money? How do we underspend the budget last year by 9, this year by 6? We get extra money. We cut people. We cut clubs. We cut non-league games. To say that we didn't have it, and then we actually underspent the budget by that much.
But a budget is an estimate.
I know it's
Right.
not supposed to be 0, but
So
an
we
estimate
have-
at 6 million is a big gap.
We have staff members that go out on unpaid leaves. We have a number of positions that aren't filled. We haven't found people to fill them yet. That all adds into it. So these are things that add to that surplus. I mean, I have 5 maintenance positions I'm trying to fill.
Yeah.
They've been empty all year. That's several $100,000. You expand that to the entire district, it adds up.
I know. It's when you go to the community and look them in the face and say, we have to make cuts.
Alex, I agree with that.
We have to make cuts.
It seems counterintuitive, right? That's the thing. You got to recognize how you have to budget. And she mentioned, like, we have teachers who go out on maternity leaves, right? So you had a budget for their whole salary, but 2 months into the school year, they go out.
I know, but I know people in the community have said, wait a second, you underspent the budget by $6 million this year. Why are you trying to pierce the cap? If you need it so bad, you're not even using the money you're budgeting for.
But we still did, we're still $3 million in the red.
I know.
But the thing is, we're what, 98% accurate?
Yeah,
in our budget.
That's pretty accurate, actually.
Okay.
So a budget of
But I agree with you,
$377 million.
Alex. On its face, without knowing the details, sounds bad.
I'm going to underspend my budget by $6 million, and we'll see how I feel.
Yeah, but you think about when you do your home budget, you put your groceries, your food, all the things. You don't want to spend $200 less one month, and that's what happened. We're looking at a $377 million. $6 million is me saving $200 on my groceries.
Put in perspective, so it's 6 days worth of expenses, right? That's all. If that's what it is, it sounds, but that's what it is. Yeah.
Meredith?
So I can see where that would be very confusing to people too. And it at first looked like oh my God, $12 million deficit for stuff that we have to pay for regardless of anything. So if we decided to cut everything that's not mandated, and that means everything from everywhere, then it's a $12 million deficit. Then things came in and it cuts it down to about a $2.5 million deficit. So let's say we made every single cut in this whole district, we would still have a deficit of $2.5 million, even though we underspent, but we also underspent with like $2.5 million from BOCES. They told us, we got about $750 in the budget. They gave us $2.5 million, but they said, that's it. We're not going to do that again.
That next year.
And they don't. And they told us, don't put anything in your budget because we're not ever going to guarantee that we're giving you something.
Correct.
So that's $2.5 million that we probably shouldn't have even put anything in the budget for, but we were smart enough to put $750. And then $1.1 million in state aid, that's from, homeless children and things like that. That fluctuates year to year. Some years we have more children, and people don't realize this, but there are homeless children that live in our district, that are from our district, but they live in Riverhead. There's a lot of cost associated with taking care of these children. And some years it's more and some years it's less. And what do you have to go by but the people that you had in the district last year and thinking that they might still be there? And then the 2.0 million, I was trying to write really fast. What was that one from?
Interest.
Okay. And that's definitely not going to be the same because the interest rates are going to start to come down and come down and come down. So when they were really high, everybody was feeling it on one side, but we were getting a lot of income from it on our side.
Yes.
So that's something that we can't bank on year to year.
Correct.
And so right now, if we ran our budget the same exact way every single year, we're still at a deficit.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it's not 12.4, it's 2.4 or 2.2 or whatever it is, but it's still a deficit.
That's
and
that's just for mandated.
Right, for mandated, that's
Yeah,
what I'm saying,
yeah.
with nothing else. That's
Yes.
cutting everything you can possibly legally cut.
Correct.
We're still at a deficit of $2.5 million no matter what you do.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, just a quick question. I know in one of the slides you had student accidental insurance. We ran into this problem a few years back where we were able to find an insurance carrier that allowed people to pay for the insurance. It was minimal. I want to say it was like $100 and something per kid, but we gave that option to the parents as to whether or not they wanted it. Some families are, both the husband and wife are insured. Some families don't have the insurance, and I know that year that we didn't have the accidental insurance, I got some phone calls that, their son got hurt, playing phys ed, in out in the fields, broke his ankle, and they wanted to know about reimbursement, and we didn't have it. So it put a big burden on that family. The following year, we offered individual insurance plans to families at a tremendously reduced rate. And I want to say it was probably $120 per child. A family might opt for that. If we have the conversation, we have to cut that 80,000. Is that something that
We'll look into that.
Yeah.
We'll look into that.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you so much, Michelle. Okay. All right, so item D, we have the approval of the minutes, okay, from January 22nd. A motion, please. Mike Cerny, second. Okay, Stephanie. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Visitors, Allison? No? Item 3 is business items. We have a consent agenda A through B. I need a motion, please. Have any Reynolds? Second, Stephanie. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item 4, we have personal consent agenda A through P for teachers. Any motion, please? Okay, Matthew Bauman, second. Michael Cerny. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Brings us to page 11. Item 5, we have personal consent agenda A through F for support staff. Any motion, please? All right, Stephanie Volpe, second by Mike Cerny. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item 6 is contracts. We have a consent agenda A through D. Any motion, please? Okay, Sabrina, second. Stephanie, all right, questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item 7 is action items. Approval of proposed 2025-26 calendar. Stephanie, motion. Second, Mike Cerny. Questions on this item? All right, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
Is that going to get up on the website tomorrow? When will the community be able to see it? I'm sorry.
The calendar.
Oh, yeah. We'll get it up tomorrow.
Okay.
And just for clarifications, we looked at calendars of surrounding districts as well as our BOCES to formulate this calendar.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Item 8, annual budget vote and election. We have a consent agenda A through E. And in a motion, please. Minnie Reynolds, second by Matthew Bauman. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item 9, we have a committee on special education consent agenda A through B. Matthew Bauman, Stephanie Volpe, second. Okay, questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. I'm sorry, go ahead.
As part of the budget vote and election of trustees, just want to make it noted to everyone so that they can pick up their packets now if they're looking to run for the Board of Ed, because 3 seats will be open, and so anybody interested should definitely go pick up their packet, get their signatures, and get that started.
And they'll be available as early as tomorrow?
Yeah, they're available right now.
Okay. Item 10, monthly reports. Anybody updates? Stephanie?
Okay, so we had a legislative committee meeting where Assemblyman Doug Smith, Michelle, and Phil Barbera came and helped us pinpoint a lot of issues. So I don't know how in detail we should go because it's been a long night already. A full district rally was off the table, maybe for next year. Smaller group possibly to Albany. Bring that to the board for discussion. February 27th is going to be the roundtable. The invites have gone out. We're starting to get some replies. Dana can update on that. We discussed a little bit of how Middle Country has been doing their advocacy. They seem to take other issues outside of budget and work on smaller things to engage the community. So we thought that was a great idea. The biggest items were what will be our ask of our elected officials. So one of the huge things were aid for UPK, making the UPK match what the expenditure is instead of having to make up a gap every year. This is where I think we need the most community input. Well, not the most, a lot of community input for this, because parents don't fully understand that we're not getting fully aided. And we've received a lot of emails of parents begging us to keep this program. I, for one, think this program's invaluable. So it would be great if the community could get involved and help us advocate for aid for UPK to match what the cost is. So also with that, we get funding from the state. We can't use all that funding. And so, for example, we get $3 million from the state on paper. We can only use 2.1. And the funding is limited, like we said before, by a number that was picked. It was 18 years ago. It hasn't gone up. Obviously, costs have gone up. There's a gap. Sachem needs to fill it. Another concern was the charter schools. Right now, we're at $400,000 plus. We're worried about what that's going to be in the years to come. There was discussion about advocating for TAN and what would be the best way to use our money to maybe lend to ourselves so that we don't have to borrow for TAN. Medicare Part B, which we already discussed, maybe advocating that the state picks that up instead of putting that on the school districts.
Could you repeat that, Steph? What was that last one?
Medicare Part B.
Okay.
Yeah. So instead of, because it's mandated by the state that we pay it for state employees, that should be a state, in our opinion, as the committee, that should be a state expense, not a school district's expense. So why are we paying that? Why is that being put on school districts? And to the tune of 4.8 million. It's a lot. And it seems to be next year more. Hold on, there's more. Unfunded mandate, ENL electric bus, special education services at 22. Maybe possibly, sorry, I didn't condense my notes like I normally do.
So E&L was another one.
Yeah, that was the first thing I said.
Okay.
We're concerned about the unfunded mandates. They need to be advocated for. We need to break them down. And we actually need the community who are impacted by these mandates. Like the ENL, for example, we have spreads over 575 students, but we don't get the full funding back.
So Steph, one of the things we talked about as a committee, and I think with Michelle, and I think we were actually at the legislative breakfast with Longwood the other day, and a lot of these issues, every district has this, but our goal was to take some of these, put it in a bullet format, and then even at the advice of Assemblyman Smith, which was, let's go up to Albany in a small group and start educating his peers and colleagues within the assembly on what these issues are, and more importantly, what the impact is to the district and then ultimately the students, right? So I think we as a board should come up with, and we want to maybe limit it to 5 of these that are higher impacting that we think we can have success on, right? There's some shorter term and longer term. So that was the goal. And then the legislative committee with Dana suggested, let's put it in a one pager that a certain subgroup can go up to Albany and then walk around. And Doug said he'll help us, coordinate all that to start educating people. Doug knows about education. A lot of his colleagues, he said, really don't understand some of these in great detail, but we need them if we're going to vote on it. So I think that's what we should do, is put together that one page with the committee and start advocating. I think then the community can also have that to make phone calls, et cetera. So. Okay.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we did do is we went to the legislative breakfast last Saturday, and a lot of other districts specifically brought up UPK. So that seems to be hitting Long Island in general. So, and to Vinny's point, we definitely need to make our unique issues here at Sachem more visible, not only to the community, but to our elected officials, because it does look like on paper we made whole and given a little bit extra. But if you go through our budget like Michelle does amazingly, you see that we can't use the money because it's restricted. And we see increases in other areas that are killing whatever benefit we got from an increase. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, one of the other issues, let me just throw that out, which was brought up at the legislative breakfast, was the CVA cases and reimbursement for that. So that's one I think we should put on our list to lobby our government officials for reimbursement of that. I mean, we're paying for sins that happened 50 years ago. The state opened us up. Perhaps they should be helping foot the bill on some of these. So prior year adjustment, I'll let you explain what that is, because that's over my head.
That came up at the meeting as well.
So the Sachem is owed $1.8 million from the state. And I think it was building aid. It was building aid. Mr. Sachs looked into that. So if the state overpays Sachem, they get their money back immediately, because we just had a situation a couple months ago on a grant that we closed, and then the state came back and said, oh, whoops, we paid you $10,800 too much. We need that back in 30 days or we're going to withhold your aid. The state is holding $1.8 million of our money, and it's been for almost 20 years. They started funding the prior year adjustments at a small percentage, but according to Doug Smith, he said they stopped during COVID. They stopped building it into the budget, and it just never went back in. So Mr. Sachs reached out to the state aid unit, and they almost laughed at him like, you're not going to see it in your career. Like, the state, you'll pay it back immediately when you're overpaid, but the state can take decades to pay us back when we're owed the money. So we have $1.8 million just sitting out there with no timeline of when we will ever see that money.
And that was a pretty big percentage of what was actually owed prior year adjustments, isn't it? The 1.8 wasn't the largest amount in the state.
That I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that.
I
But
thought
in
somebody-
total, it's $300 million statewide.
Stephanie, the only thing I do is we do that one-page thing. We should look at what Middle Country is advocating for and see what the similarities are, and actually, really kind of drive it home, because they're going up to Albany, and if we go up to Albany, they hear it multiple times. It may leave a bigger impact.
Their issues are not as bad as ours because they got so much more funding than we did. So they're not going up the way we would have to go up.
Yeah.
And which is why we also decided not to go up that way.
Yeah.
So I think Phil had a lot of great input too, which I don't want to put him on the spot, but there was a lot of discussion on the most effective way to communicate to our community. February 13th is the next meeting on Zoom. I don't have a set time yet because I have to speak to the chair, see when she's available. But there was having like hashtags, having a virtual lobby day, doing more of an awareness campaign instead of an angry one, like trying to get it so that people see what we're actually going through here as a district instead of constantly yelling, we don't have the money, like breaking it down into points that right now other districts aren't really dealing with that issue that we have. So hopefully the roundtable will be the kickoff. And then if we do decide to send some of us to Albany, and in addition, pick some other, stakeholders.
Anything to add to that?
I think that one of the things that we were saying is that our local guys, Doug, Anthony, they know our problems. They live here. They pay the taxes here. Some of them even have children in our school system. So they understand it. And we just, we keep yelling at them. We have to open this up. So I think the going to Albany thing, I think that we have to continue to not just talk to our local guys, but we have to talk to the governor. We have to talk to those other people that are truly the ones that are in control of all of this, because our local guys are right on board with us. But I think that we need the board to give us a specific charge, because legislative is so broad and there's so many issues that we could, the meeting was long and we could go on, and the meeting was long and could have been
a lot of
even
stuff
longer.
impact us too.
Right.
We have a lot of issues that if we dig deep in, it would be even longer.
Right.
But, and not by our making, by unfunded mandates and by, so
So I'd like for the board to say, we want you guys, yes, we want you guys to have a small group, go to Albany, but this is our bullet points that we think are the most important. And obviously
right.
administration.
And that would go
come
on
up
all
with
the
that.
flyers and all
But
the,
by our
advocacy.
next meeting, we're hoping that you guys will have that for us because we do need specific direction on exactly what to do.
And it would be really helpful for next meeting and for the roundtable.
Alex?
My only recommendation is if you're going to make a one page, to keep it as simple and layman and short and to the point as possible. I know that it's so easy for us because there's so many issues to get into the weeds, and then as soon as you're in there, you've lost half the people up there.
That's why I'm
So-
asking you guys, because the meeting could go
I would just
on
say, like,
long and
whoever
long, yeah.
is it responsible for designing it, whoever has input in it, simple, clear, to the point, succinct. And then if you do go to Albany, really designate a point person that can stay on topic, that can really drive home the stronger points and the message on that sheet. Because if everyone starts to Stephanie's point, it's very easy to get angry at Albany. It's very simple to make that hard right turn and go nuts. But if we have someone like Michelle, I'm not volunteering you, but you understand the financial impact of every one of them. It would be much easier for something like that to happen. Just
Having
my
the
recommendation.
extra people there was a
Yes.
huge help. Having Assemblyman Doug, having Michelle, having Phil, it helped our whole committee stay on some sort of track, even though there was a lot of tracks.
Yeah.
I don't know if the legislative committee forwarded it to the entire board, but we do have one pages from the past that Dana put into I don't remember if that went to everybody. Yeah. So if I'll forward that to everyone, that was more of like a work thing.
Yeah,
like
why don't we prepare why don't we get the one prepared that we want, and then share it
Okay.
with the board for input
That's a
and
good idea.
clarification.
Yep.
Because that's about 10 years old. It's the
Yeah,
format's
yeah,
good,
yeah,
but let's
yeah.
put our issues on there
Yeah.
with the impacts, and then we
Okay,
can- yeah.
that's a good idea. So that'll be on. I think.
Do you want our what's on it, or you're going to create it?
No, I think we should figure out what we should do. Can we do that now? Can we figure out what points we're going to really
I think we
focus
have
on?
about I'll jump in. We have about 5 or 6. We have too many.
Right.
We wanted to boil it down, so I think we were looking for input from administration to say what's the most high impact that we think we could be successful on. So
Right, the cost should be right next to it. Like the TAN is what, 2.4,
that's exactly what we said. Because Nassau County
$2.7
doesn't do
million.
the
I
10.
mean, if we could add $2.7 million to our budget.
We were told by Assemblyman Smith that Nassau County, their funding is aligned with the school district's funding, so they don't have to do a TAN. Suffolk County does. I mean, it's kind of crazy. So, yeah.
Any other, so I think if you forward that one-page document that you were talking about to the board, maybe we could narrow it down for the next meeting.
We can give you the big list that I have more
Mm-hmm.
condensed, but the one-page document's really old. So do you want to make a
Well, I don't know
sample
what's on
one-page
it.
document?
I mean, is it the same stuff on
Michelle, do you
No.
and I want to work on that tomorrow? And
Yeah.
that way we'll give
Yeah, I
you
don't think
our
the-
most
Yeah.
needs.
I don't think the format is so special. I think it's just what you guys have to tell us
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
so that we
Alright.
can be very focused because
Yeah.
there's so many things that we tend to
Like I
lose
said, we can put a
focus and not
dollar
be
amount to
focused.
it and say, look, we have a $6 million gap.
We'll put it in the
change a
Friday
couple
packet
things.
so you'll have a chance to get your eyes on it.
Yeah, thank you.
So we sat down the other day just trying to go through the foundation aid formula. And I asked
that's-
Mr. Trombetta, how do I write this?
Another whole issue. Yeah. Yeah. And look, we've said it a million times. I mean, it's mind-boggling how our neighbors who have very similar demographics to us are getting $10.5 million more. Our other neighbors to the west, $32 million more. We understand the challenges in that particular school district. We said it a million times, right, Mike, that we should be looking at somebody who really knows the aid, how it's distributed, to see whether or not we got our fair share over the last 5 or 6 years. I'm waiting for that memo, that email that comes up and says, "Hey, congratulations, you guys are getting an extra $10 million." I've never seen it. The only time we saw that money was gap elimination was restored in 2016. And the only way we got that money restored is that we went to Newsday to tell our story. We had page 2 and 3, of Newsday. Joe Napolitano, a CHM graduate, who happened to be a reporter, got special permission to tell our story. Okay. And all of a sudden that money was restored. But, listen, I think it's great to go up to Albany and certainly reach out to our elected officials. But, when we get media coverage as to how we were shortchanged, when you have John Flanagan there saying as a Senate,
That's right.
leader, okay, especially of the education, sector of Senate.
Yeah, that's when there was checks and balances, and we controlled one of the houses.
When he says, "I don't know how Sachem took the 20 million. I don't. It's unexplainable." That media coverage, and I really give credit to Joe Napolitano. That media coverage is what restored that $16 million in that 1 year. Maybe we need to look at that, but I think we need to do a forensic study to see whether or not we're getting our appropriate share of what we're supposed to be getting. I think that's important. I really do. I don't think we are. I don't think every year when we get $1.2 million, you want to come up, you can come up. Yeah.
Rob, if you do get that email, don't click on anything. It probably originated in Africa or something.
Which
If
one?
it's the email telling us that we got more
Well,
money
it's
than
asking you for gift cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey guys, good evening. Sorry, Rob, just because of Mr. Scavo. Just to that point, I just actually asked NICEA to do a forensic on Sachem's budget over the last decade, and I'm expecting that report by Friday. So I was going to share it with Michelle and Patty right away as soon as I get it. It kind of showed a little breakdown, so I got a quick blurb of analysis, but I'm getting a fuller report this week. So I'm going to share that with you guys to kind of expedite some of that review for you, so you can help Michelle can kind of maybe help target a deficit that you might see that's maybe come from the state, because we talk about it a lot, but we never can pinpoint, are we being underfunded? Where is that underfunding coming from? So, just reiterating that you have a partner with us, obviously, for this whole budget thing. So whatever we could do going up to Albany, we're in full support. Whatever we could do to support and help, we'll do. The one thing I was going to mention was, because you were mentioning one pager, social media is obviously a massive tool. There are things where if you want to make a targeted point or a couple of specific points, you put out a plan that all of your people, we can try to help do that with sharing specific information, and we all send it at the same time. You overload the algorithm, and that algorithm now gets shared at a much larger rate with all the people that you want to target. So we could target our legislators, our senators, with very targeted, if you're having hundreds or thousands of people all sharing that same exact post in a short period of time, it's a technique that we've utilized before. So if you guys with syntax or whoever, we would help in any way we could. All right.
So thank you. The one other thing I want to bring up, and I was going to bring it up in new business. We use a company called State Aid Specialist that would actually analyze all of our state aid reimbursement. We still use them. Okay. And it was free for the district. They just took the first year 50% of the savings, and we got the other 50%.
Well, I know they
Well,
do
it's
some
better like in anything.
they do some Medicaid billing work for us now, and we have another consultant that does our stacking. But we can have them. I actually spoke with Anthony Cachera. I spoke to him. Well, he emailed me just the other day to say, take a look at your foundation aid numbers, because it looks like our beds data is about 80 students less than the beginning of the school year data that the governor based her budget on. And this was going to be in the Friday packet as well. So if that's true, and we sat down with our data team this week, that could possibly decrease our foundation aid by $500,000. So those numbers look correct, but we're looking into, and I have all the reports here I was going to discuss. We do need to look at that. Right now, it's looking like we're becoming wealthier in Sachem, and our neighbor that we like to compare ourselves to is not as wealthy. That's why they're seeing, they're 0.7 combined wealth ratio. That's why they're seeing close to $10 million increase in aid. Our combined wealth ratio for the upcoming school year is up to 0.89, up from 0.84. So
But when they do that, we only have a small portion of Lake Grove, and then there's this bigger portion of very, very wealthy homes. When they do that, are they going on like Lake Grove, or are they going on just Sachem's portion of
So
Lake Grove?
I have all of the reports here, and it's a huge project to go through. Basing on the valuation of the homes, they base it on the income that's been reported. You know, when you do your income taxes and you file electronically and you click on your school district, so they pull the income figures from there. As we become wealthier, according to the state's guidelines, then the state says you don't need as much help from us, and then our aid ratios are going down. That's why when we put the state aid figures up at the last presentation, transportation aid, high cost, excess cost aid, and our building aid is based on our buildings, but those other two pieces are going down because the state is covering less because they're saying you don't need it, Sachem, you're becoming wealthier.
But they don't say the median income of Lake Grove or the median
No.
house sale of Lake Grove, because that would be huge.
I don't know how
'cause
they pull all of the towns in.
It's targeted to Sachem. You know that?
Remember, I-
'Cause- Okay, because that would be huge if they're putting in $1.5 million, $1.5 million homes that have nothing to do with us. If they're factoring that in, of course we're going to look wealthier than we are.
I was going to say, it's funny, Michelle, because I've had this conversation with other people. What you just said is, so they look upon us as that Sachem is getting wealthier. Okay. So you should be able to contribute more. But then they also handcuff us on our ability to tap into that extra wealth by requiring us to have a 60% super majority to raise the money. This is one of my biggest arguments about, and I was telling Chris that, if you read some of these cases, some of the dissenting opinions are like, the state's got it both ways now. They can, in essence, bankrupt you simply by doing what they're doing to us, right? That's they telling us we're wealthier, so you should be able to pay more, but then they handcuff you on how your ability to raise that and to use that wealth, right? They don't let you tap that wealth unless you get 60% of the people to vote for it. So,
yeah, and look to the point of the combined wealth ratio. For many, many years, our combined wealth ratio was a 1. Is that correct, Ron? And we were getting an average of $3-4 million a year. So now we're at a 0.89%, which means we're a poorer district than we were 10 or 15 years ago, and we're getting $1.2 million a year. So the state, and this was Sal Nicosi's biggest argument, is that you look back at what they funded our district, years ago. They were funding our district at 50% and then 48%. And now we're down to what? 1%?
Low 30s.
Yeah. So they're just funding our district at a much, much lower level, than they have been.
And at the same time, the state budget has doubled in the last 7 to 10 years. So they're funding us less while doubling what they're charging and taxing.
That was Sal Nicosi's biggest fight, was that they funded us at 50% and now we're down to 30%. They're just not funding us the same way. So that combined wealth ratio, I know years ago, before the tax cap, when we were at zeros, we were getting about $4 million increase per year, $3 or $4 million. And now we're considered a poor district and we're getting 1.2. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. So I'm sorry. Okay. Any other reports, committee reports?
Real quick, Budget Advisory Committee met 2 weeks ago after our last meeting. There was some recommendations sent up, and I think Michelle's, taken some of those recommendations that you see in the presentation today with highlighting certain things that are mandatory. We'll have another meeting tomorrow, but that's, I think, all to report just now. So, okay.
When your next meeting for the Budget Advisory?
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
Yeah, there's a Zoom meeting out there for the committee members.
Could you send that out to the board in case anyone?
If anybody wants to join, I'll flip it out to you tonight when I get home or tomorrow.
Meredith?
And I know we already talked about it, but I just want to talk about the Sachem Ed Foundation again. I have a quick question because that's not a board thing, but we do have 2 board liaisons on it. Are we allowed to put this on our website? It's on there? Okay, I haven't been on the website. And I just want to make sure that everybody really understands that it's the only thing that every ounce of the money goes right back to the children. It is the only thing in the whole district where you can raise the money and it goes 100% back to the kids. So that's huge.
Any other committee reports? Okay. Closing public comments. No visitors. Old business is nothing on the agenda. Board discussion items, we did them up front earlier in the agenda. Future discussion items. Stephanie?
Again, with the changes in the government, we really need to have some kind of plan with the Department of Ed changes, especially since recently they're starting to promote charter schools. So how is that going to impact Sachem? How do we want to handle this as a district? Like, we can hope it's not going to be that bad, especially since we live in New York, but it came up even with our legislative breakfast.
Just for clarification, you're talking about the possible reduction or elimination of U.S. Department of Education.
Yeah, and how that will impact us. We don't know how bad it will impact New York. We don't know how bad it will impact Sachem. We don't know if it might not. We need to start planning ahead so that if things do go south, we have a plan to make sure we're shored up. Especially my personal concern is the push towards charter schools right now. Like, that's concerning, since just last year we were rallying against it and we got mixed feedback, predominantly worry at the legislative breakfast. They were saying New York will get through it, which we will, but we need a plan to get through this stuff.
So why don't we do this? We could put it as a future agenda item, but maybe, Michelle, could you get us some data as to what we receive from the federal government? Is that Title I and Title IX grants?
Title 1, 2, 3, and 4 we
Comes from
received.
the federal government?
Yep.
Then we know the dollar amount that if the U.S.
I can get that for you.
Okay. So we can see what the fiscal impact would be if it
and how we would want to deal with this in Sachem. Is it going to be tax increases? Is it going to be, and I don't want to speculate. The funding is an issue. There's also, how is this going to impact IEPs and 504s? And there's a lot of impact that could happen in the local level that we're already seeing in other states, and everybody assumes that New York's impenetrable to this stuff because of our climate, but that could shift. And also, next agenda item is, do we have an update on what's going on with Union Avenue? Because that coincides with our budget advisory and then into legislative.
We can get that information to the board. Absolutely. Yep.
Just to piggyback on that, can we just update the community quick on, there was a lot of talk that it was being held up by the local governments, but what actually was the holdup initially and where we are right this second?
For Union Avenue?
Yes. Wasn't it true that it was paperwork on our end that needed to be submitted correctly, and then there was something else?
So it was going back and forth to the state.
Yeah.
John Grillo, our architect, was sending stuff back and forth. They were kicking it back with missing information, sending it back again, back and forth. It had nothing to do with the local government.
Yeah, I mean,
It
I
had
just
to do with
initially
getting
there
the
was some
permit from the state.
finger pointing to local government or officials, and I'm just going to say this, and I don't care if there's a conflict. It was not Neil Foley in Brookhaven. It was not my brother in the county. It was not Doug Smith at the state. It was us and paperwork and whatever else needed to be approved up there.
It was
in
more the
Albany.
state
Yes.
up in Albany.
Okay.
Any other future discussion items? Okay. All right. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 26th here in the boardroom. At this point, I need a motion to go into exec session, discuss a matter, personnel matter of a staff member being known to the board. Okay. Mike, Stephanie, second. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.